Good evening. We're going to go ahead and call the City of La Marque City Council Workshop Agenda to order. Certainly, this is May 17th, 2021, and there's a notice that has been hereby given that the City Council of the City of La Marque, Texas will conduct a workshop via telephone video conference hosted through Zoom as provided by the attached notice on Monday, May 17th, 2021, beginning at 6 p.m. for the purposes of considering the following agenda. And certainly we are glad to be back tonight. The council and administrative staff are here with us physically. Many of you are here with us via Zoom teleconference. We welcome you to the work that's about to begin. This is progress. And so having said that, we'll ask our city clerk to call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Sure. Councilmember District B,
Present.
Councilmember District C,
Present.
Councilmember District D,
Present.
and Mayor.
Present. Thank you, Robin. Item 3, citizens' participation. This is limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments from the public at this time. Any person with city-related business who has signed up may speak to council on a specific agenda item. It'll be limited to 3 minutes. In compliance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, the city may not deliberate on comments. Personal attacks will not be allowed, and personnel matters should be addressed to the city manager during normal business hours. I have the timer here in front of me, those of you that are unable to see it. And when you get to about 30 seconds, I will begin to wave. I'll wave my hand to indicate to you that this timer has gotten down to 30 seconds. And so having said that, Madam Clerk, is there anyone that has signed up or that has indicated they wish to speak?
Yes, sir. I had 2. Takeisha Murphy was the first one. Is she on? Or I don't think she is. Is there a Richard Loftus? Both of them have.
Yes.
Kyle, is Takeisha here? Okay. Mr. Loftus, would you state your full name and your address before you speak, sir?
Richard Loftus, 309 Johnson Street in the great city of La Marque, Texas.
Go ahead, Mr. Loftus.
Okay. So good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and all assembled. I first want to give my congratulations to Mr. Carson and, welcome him to the team. And then second off, my first question is directed to either Mr. Jackson, Tink Jackson, or the city attorney as to why are we still having meetings via Zoom when other cities such as Hitchcock, Pearland, Kemah, Santa Fe, Friendswood, and those cities there are all having in-person meetings aside from the city of Galveston. So there are many of us, myself included, because I had trouble trying to get on this Zoom just a second ago, and a lot of older citizens who's not so tech savvy or having problems being able to be a part of this process. So we want to know how long is this going to continue to where we got to come in on Zoom and, try and finagle our way to be a part of the process. So that's first off. Second off, this here would probably be a Chief Jackson. I don't know if he's here deal, but we seem to have an issue with a lot of citizens being harassed and threatened by individuals in this community, and there seems to be nothing being done about it. We have Miss Tamara Smith, who's going through a lot with an individual who, from what she's told me, she's been coming into a lot of dead ends with trying to get this matter resolved, and y'all aware of the Johnsons and the issues that they've had. So we want to know if there's anything that can be done to help citizens, law-abiding citizens at the same time, to get some relief from the issues that they're having. And so that was the second issue. And third off, this is just for the council as a whole. I want to let you guys know that we have elected you all to do a job for the people, the people's business. You've been elected to do that. So we ask that you, when you're doing your due diligence, when handling the people's business, whether it be hiring, firing, the budget process, and all of these things that are in the best interest of the city, we ask you to do it with the citizens' best interest at heart and not just your own one-sided agenda. Because in my opinion, and I'm sure some people will agree with me, that the citizens are the true leaders and the people that run this city. So that's all I have. I know you probably can't answer those, but just, I just wanted to put that on your mind. But I definitely would like an answer to when we're going to get back into being able to come into the city council meetings in person as far as citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Loftus. Are there any other persons signing up or wishing to speak at this time? Hearing none and seeing none, certainly this is a workshop, so let me remind all of us that if citizens wish to speak or to address the council on any of these agenda items during the workshop, that's the reason why we have this in the workshop format. So they may have questions as we go through this workshop discussion. Item 4, updates. We'll have an update on internal procedures for speed bumps, as well as an update from consulting traffic engineer on traffic impact analysis for 4975 Gulf Freeway or the Amazon development area. Mr. Jackson.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Welcome back. Earlier this afternoon, earlier this morning, I emailed out to you the revisions to the speed hump installation request approval procedures requirements. We took into account all of the comments from the last council meeting, and those comments have been incorporated into this revision of the policies and procedures, or the procedures we'll use for evaluation of speed humps from this point forward. I don't believe, Derek, you can jump in here if you want, but I don't believe there was anything that came up at the last meeting that we didn't address in the new update.
No, it was all addressed, and it was discussed with our consulting traffic engineer to try to make sure that those were not only built in a way that was really feasible and that the traffic engineer could support.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Jackson as relates to this new updated version of criteria? Go ahead.
Mr. I'm asking for some guidance. I just received that this afternoon, and it was very extensive, by the way. So much so, and I made a comment in an earlier meeting, that our ordinances, our information to our community should be in plain English. It should be simple enough for someone in our community that perhaps doesn't have the level of education that I might have, that can understand what we're proposing. And what I saw was just overkill, in my opinion. It was excessive. So I'm asking for some guidance, Mr. Mayor, Tink. We've accepted this, or are we? I'm not well in workshop. We're discussing it, but it's a first read. I would like it to be discussed more. I still haven't yet been able to go through, and because it came in this afternoon, and take it line by line, section by section. And more importantly, I'm going to communicate with my neighborhood associations that have been the ones that have been at the forefront in terms of asking for and seeking some guidance with regard to these issues of speeding in our streets. So that's.
Let me answer one of your questions really quickly. The council, and we need to be clear, and I want to be crystal clear here tonight. The council sets policy. That we are the legislative body of this municipality. And so any policy that will be implemented that we will require our citizens to follow, in my opinion, as mayor, and as the head of this government, as the head of this city, we should bring that before council for approval. Having said that, I don't think that Mr. Jackson is asking us to approve anything tonight. I think that he's trying to share some things with us
Right,
for our comment.
so at this
Go ahead.
point, council has set a policy, and that policy was we will allow speed humps, even though the administrative staff said that from a liability standpoint, that was a bad idea. So council came back and said, okay, but we want speed humps. So that was what we were given. So we went to the traffic engineers and tried to come up with a policy or a set of requirements so that when we allowed somebody to put in a speed hump, we at least have some protections from liability from that they meet some engineering criteria. We brought that to the last council meeting. Council didn't like some of the stuff that was in there, so we went back in and changed it. If you want to do an ordinance on speed hump, sure, council can do that. And if that's what you want to do, then we'll reset it as an ordinance, and you guys can put it in there whatever you want. There'll be a speed hump every 15 feet if that's what you want to put. We're trying to get a set of procedures and requirements that we can use to implement these things and put them in a safe manner, in a way that takes into account effects on our emergency equipment, when emergency equipment has to run, that takes into account all those other things. That's why we consulted with the traffic engineers the first time. We took the concerns back that you guys gave us, which was things like, well, if you require 400 feet, or the street to be a certain length, that doesn't work because some of the streets are shorter than that. So we went back and said, okay, here's an issue they came up with, is that they're worried about the streets being, that we have some short streets that we may need some. So, okay, so they went back and looked, and we set some different parameters in there where those streets would now be eligible to have one put on. You can workshop this and do an ordinance out of it, but we still have to have some original guidance to start with, and you're gonna have to start with an engineering principle. The principle we have to have some kind of engineering principle behind it, because we are talking about roads. We are talking about something that people have the right to utilize. And when you change the right to their utilization of it, it creates issue. And so that's why we tried to do this with the traffic engineers in a way where we limit that as much as we can, but still meet what we were told, which is we want speed bumps. We don't care if there's liability or not. So if you guys want to do something different, that's fine. Then just tell us you want to do something different. We'll do something different.
Yeah. So let me jump in there. What you're suggesting that council did, Mr. Jackson, was we call that set, give you direction. We did not implement a policy. We gave you direction. You came back with language and criteria that it sounds like Mr. Compion and maybe others have not had time to review. There are some things in here that I'm sure will be questioned, but we will certainly need time to develop a policy, work with you. If you would like to do that in a workshop, we would certainly love to join you in that effort to make sure that not only our engineering department, as well as our public safety departments are in concert with what the citizens would like for us to do. Having said that, certainly, Joe, you can continue with your questions.
Well, once again, I'm looking for clarity, because some of the discussions, I guess, that have occurred around this issue predated me. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah, there's been
so-
discussions about this since I started.
All right, so that's number one. So now there is some clarity to that. Number two, I think that it's important, and I'm following up on a comment made by our speaker, Mr. Loftus, earlier. I think somehow we need to engage, at least on my part. I have a group of it, I call it a little District B advisory group. I want to have some discussion with them. I'd like to take this, listen to them. And if anything at all, perhaps we could even have a public hearing or a town hall just around this. I think there's a difference between speed humps and speed bumps. That's the first thing that I want to clarify, right? And they're two issues, and even from what I've read from an engineering perspective, there are two different impacts on our heavy equipment as on using a speed bump and a speed hump. Are there possibilities that we utilize this process to have a process where a speed hump is installed for some temporary period of time to deal with the speeding issue, and then it's eliminated at some point. Let's deal with the issue that has arisen. So all of those things are the reasons why I say I'd just like to have some further discussion and involve the community in this in some way, if at all possible. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. T.
Mayor, would you mind if I spoke to this just a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
So just speaking of the internal mechanics, so these are literally internal review procedures. Now, they would not typically be brought to council and they would not typically be posted on the website. But in this case, it is an issue the public is very interested in. To your question, Mr. Compion, what would the public need to do if they want to submit a request for speed humps? So we were told to try to do something really quick. So in the meantime, this would be a way for members of the public to put together a petition for where they want a speed hump and all the various members of that residential area to go ahead and submit the petition together. All in all, considering the engineering involved, I know this seems pretty big, but it's an attempt to really let people do what they wanted to do. You can come back and work through policies and such, but just so that the council's aware, this is just internal review guidelines. It is an engineering document. That's why it's so detailed, but it's to let the public know what the engineers on the other side are looking for. At the end of the day, if council decided you had a specific street you wanted to put speed humps in, you could do that through budget appropriations and projects for it, et cetera. You could talk to the engineers about it. This is specifically for only the public to be able to request it and to know what the city engineers would be looking at.
Yeah, and I'm glad Darren mentioned that, because the first time we talked about this, the last meeting or the meeting before, whatever it was, I mean, that was what we heard was, we want to do this now. Quit talking about liability, let's do this now. So we had to have a mechanism in place. So council said, we want speed humps. Fine, we heard it. We need to have a mechanism in place for people to do it. So that's what this document was written for. This doesn't say we do or we don't or anything else. This says, this gave citizens immediate access to come in and do something. And so that's why this was put together. It could be, like Dara said, during the budget season, you guys could come in and say, we want $50,000 put this, how much does the speed hump cost? We figure that out. We want $50,000 a year put the speed humps. And these are the streets we want to do. That's what we'll start working on, is looking at those streets and where we can put them. Because there's some other issues, of course, and we address these in here. You can't just put them, Councilman Carlson may want one at a certain place, but if that's right in the middle of somebody's driveway, they have the right not to have it right in the middle of their driveway. So it sets some minimum guidelines about how far from somebody's driveway, some other things in there. And that's why the petition was 75% of the street have to sign off on it. Because if one person on the street wants it and the rest of the people don't want it, and we put it in, we're immediately going to have issues with that as well. So we're just trying to set some overarching guidelines here for people to be able to say, okay, we want one now. We don't want to wait. What give us a process that we can do it, and that's what this document did.
Mayor, city manager, I haven't had a chance to review the new ones yet, the new revision. So I'd like a little bit more time to review it. Okay. The only issue I have is just, and I understand where the council posted on, or had it posted, wanted it posted, excuse me, but to me, it doesn't seem like if we're posting a policy that's not even approved yet, that's going to cause a little bit of confusion with the citizens.
Yeah, so to that comment, if that's okay, Mayor, can I address that? Yeah, so that's where I'm saying this is, I changed the title on it just to make that really clear. This is an internal review line set. That's it, right? So it doesn't need council approval because you directed Mr. Jackson to come for sorry, I know actually here when I say you. So council had directed Mr. Jackson to come up with a process for citizens to be able to submit petitions for speed humps immediately. Okay, so that's what's here. So it does not, at this point, it doesn't require council approval. That's why it's only an update. If you want to direct Mr. Jackson to not take petitions from citizens for speed humps at this point, we could pull it off the website, wait through it. If you want the option of submitting petitions right now, under these criteria, doesn't mean you can't do additional speed humps as council. But this would be the process for people in the public to be able to submit their request and know what's expected.
Maybe just a revision of the wording instead of policy, because a policy, to me, a policy says it's done.
It is revised. It's not a policy anymore. It is,
Okay.
it says internal review procedures and requirements, I believe.
No,
Here's,
that's not what it says. It's
listen,
the speed bumps.
I know on Friday when I had it, it still said policy.
and,
so-
and at
But
this
I haven't
point-
looked at it since, so unless it
No,
changed.
it got posted today.
And
Sorry.
at this point, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We directed Mr. Jackson that we wanted to make sure that our citizens had a right to request speed bumps. You and I both know that what should have happened was that there should have been a basic policy created for council's review, for council's approval. This internal thing that you're saying that does not require council's approval, all policies within our city, any policies within our city require council approval.
May,
If you look at the city charter, all policies are created by council. And so if we've never done it like that before, let me say to you now, what I've been hearing in my visiting all these homes, knocking on doors, talking to people, the people want more engagement and they want more commentary and they want more ability to affect their government. What's been happening here is that all sorts of things have been created and then they've just been brought to council sometimes for approval. Citizens don't like that. And so everything that we do, especially as it relates to something that has come from our citizenry, I would prefer that we do that through this council, that we vote, that we approve, that we work, that we craft, that we as a council work together to give them what they have requested that we give them. And so everything that you're saying, Dira, I get why you're saying it, but the citizens are wanting us to do something different today. And so, in my opinion, what we need to do is have a workshop, and the council needs to be able to weigh in on this policy. Because there's some things in this policy that it seems like prohibit speed bumps. For example, 400 vehicles per day going through a residential street. That's not very likely. That's something that would prohibit it. Go ahead, dear. If you want to.
So first, I just like to clarify, I don't think it's at all clear. I think maybe there's some hang up on the word policy. For instance, I have what I would consider policies, but those are more about, I would call them more internal processing guidelines. I think this does fall square in that category. It doesn't mean council can't do it differently. So just to clarify, first off, the 400 vehicles per day has been adjusted. That was posted today, honestly, because that's as fast as I could get it done and posted along with all the other items we were doing. So I apologize that wasn't posted any earlier. What I'm hearing is that you want, instead of internal processing guidelines, council's interested in workshopping an ordinance. Would that be accurate for all of council?
On my part, I want as much citizen input and transparency as we build this process. That's all I'm looking for. Like this, you mentioned this, saying several times, you said this was posted. You're saying on our website, or you're just saying posted to us?
It is posted on the website. That was the original council
it was
direction
already
is,
posted.
It was, yeah. the
right,
council.
is to have procedure. And so there was an older version that was, it was replaced. We left the title the same, just to keep from being confusing because people looked at a speed hump policy as a new version. Okay, so workshop sounds like on an ordinance or policy by council instead.
And I don't know if we have this engagement tool. And if not, then perhaps we can talk about it as well too. Is how to, other than citizens just talking with us, and we always want them to do that, at least I do, right? 24/7 I'm available. But how can we facilitate other discussions? At least, as I said, I have this little advisory group. I've got some HOA associations, perhaps in other areas that doesn't necessarily exist. But I do want that opportunity for everybody to have a healthy discussion, as opposed to, getting that call, as I'm hearing from some people right now. There's a secret government at work, and they're doing things without us knowing about it. That's sometimes as silly as it's getting on this stuff. So it's out in the open, and that's what I'm just seeking for, some discussion and engagement on that side. But thank you.
My only hangup is the word policy. So, and the reason being, like I said, to me, a policy says it's done in place. Now, if we want to post it on the website, I know it was approved by council, put it on the website. But if you want to me, it's the verbiage of policy, or instead of policy, like a guideline, or like you said, internal.
Internal review procedures and requirements.
Correct. Because to me, like I said, policy triggers, it's been said, done, put in stone. That's just the way I think. Policy is it's done. So maybe we could check or change the verbiage on that in the future, and all future stuff that we post, unless it's approved and put in place.
Well, so but just to clarify on that, policies are amended all the time. There's probably 50 internal policies that I've done since I've been here, and council has no right to review those. I don't have right to review administrative policies. That's what the charter says. That's why you have a manager council form of government. So we do internal policies all the time. We did internal policies related to COVID. I know about that stuff, and policies change all the time. Council wants to do an ordinance, that's fine, but we can't change all of our internal workings. There's been policies in the city since the day that started that never came to council because they're administrative policies. And so, you have to be careful with what we're talking about here, whether we're talking about administrative policy or we're talking about something else, because if you're talking about something else, then that's a power that's in an ordinance or a power that's in a resolution or something. And so we need to make sure that we don't cross that line where all of a sudden it sounds like a policy has the same weight as an ordinance, or it has the same meaning as a resolution. I mean, they're called different things for different reasons, because that dictate, ordinance has to go through, it has to be published, has to go through 2 public hearings, has to go through all that. They're not as easy to change because they are more set in stone. They also have a different weight that goes with them. I mean, they have a more effective weight that goes with them. A resolution is a piece of paper. A policy can be changed at, it can be changed at any time. So, council does ordinances and resolutions. That establishes policy. The budget, I mean, we do a budget every year. That's a policy, but it's not called a policy. It's called a budget. But inside of that budget, council approves all these things, but they don't sit there and say, okay, but with this $50,000, this is exactly what you're going to do. Or with this line item here, this is exactly what you're going to do. They say, we need to do street improvements, or we need to do whatever. And we're setting a policy that says we're going to put some money aside for that. And with that money, you go do all you can to fix this or fix that, or do what you need to do within the city by priority based on what's in the worst condition. So policy, to me, policy has always been an administrative word. So that's the way we use policy, as an administrative word, not as a council action word.
Well, sorry,
Go ahead, ma'am.
Mayor, if that's okay.
Casey,
I
did
was
you
just
have
gonna
anything?
say, yeah, so to be totally transparent, I haven't felt very passionate about the speed humps versus speed bumps, is there a difference? I did not,
Yes.
there is, okay.
There is.
Showing my ignorance, again, I don't know the difference between speed humps and speed bumps, but, and my lack of passion about this has purely been because I have not had my citizenry reaching out to me specifically about this, and, about a lot of other things, but not this. And so I respect, though, that, I'm hearing a fellow council people saying, I'm hearing about this. This means something to people. From what I'm hearing on the dais here, I agree. There needs to be, I think, a general understanding of the fact that not every policy goes before us, because in the name of avoiding inertia and gridlock and making sure things happen in the city, our administration needs to have the ability to make decisions about the day-to-day and to keep things moving forward that we don't have to sign off on. We always, as the legislative body, have the ability to go, whoa, let's bring that in front of us. That doesn't look right, or we don't like the implications of this or the impact of this. This particular item sounds like, to me, just listening, that there is enough feelings and enough citizen passion behind it. But yeah, we should pull it back. Let's talk about it some more. And that the direction that was given, you guys worked your tails off to get something out, but it's just still not sitting right with what I hear Mayor and Councilman Compion saying, the ear of their folks. So I'm in support of talking more and learning exhaustively the difference between speed humps and speed bumps and talking that out. And I really appreciate what you guys did, because I know it takes a lot to get something turned around that quickly. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Did you want to respond?
So to some of the comments I've heard too, maybe this will help a little bit, is so you were talking about public engagement. So council can do additional public engagement, but I will note that per your charter, which is pretty unusual, you have 2 readings of an ordinance, and you have a required public hearing that happens on second reading of every ordinance. So you've automatically got built into ordinances that goes before council. You can workshop it first, then it can come as an ordinance, then you can read it. That would be 3 readings. But you have some public engagement built into your process automatically with ordinances. So if you were going to take the speed hump way, I mean, that would be my advice anyway, because honestly, the enforceability of a policy adopted by council begins to get very, very difficult to deal with, since that's not a typical method. But workshopping an ordinance sounds like it might solve your issues, and it gives staff more clear direction of where you want to go. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, if ever there is anything as it relates to the public, it's my belief that that should come before council. You guys can call it whatever you want. Here's what I do know. I know that every day I get a call about how this government is not responsive to the people. Every day. Every day I get a call from a worried parent about a speeder speeding down a residential street. I get calls all the time about people who feel like this government is at war with them and that this government is unresponsive to their needs every single day. I don't know about Mr. Carlson, nor can I even speak for Mr. Compion or even Ms. McAuliffe. But I believe that we've been put here with a mandate to take this government back for the people. And so long as I'm sitting in any of these seats, that's what's going to happen from this point forward. So if it has anything to do with the public, internal policies, I've been here a long time. I get it. Nobody even suggested that. When I say policy, I'm speaking contextually of a policy that engages the public. And not just any policy, but one that has life or death ramifications, you see. And when I see things like 400 cars have to pass down a residential street in order for that street to even be considered for a speed bump or a speed hump, knowing that the backdrop of this administration has suggested that bumps or speed humps are liable and that it would cause us problems down the road, it makes me think that perhaps we're not being as responsive. And you know what that does to me, Dara? It agitates me. Because I've been put here with a mandate to make sure that this government is given back to the people. Now that that's been said, I would like, and I'm one vote, a serious workshop on this. And I'm going to ask the rest of the council what they would prefer. But I want to serve us notice moving forward that for me personally, the rest of this meeting, and apparently until we get the message, this government, the city of Lamarck, the city council, is a government for the people, right? For the people. And so that's the way that I choose to lead us into governing. What the people want, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that they get. So long as it's lawful, we'll do that. I'm off my soapbox. I needed to say that. I am not happy about how these things are coming before this council. I've been here a long time, and it seems like we're not getting the information we need. Case in point, we got it today. What say you, Mr. Compton?
No, I think I've said, sometimes I have
Workshop?
nothing more. If we can facilitate some further discussion, and I know individually, I will be in my district, right? One thing I've noticed about, and by the way, I look around, I think I'm one of the oldest people in this room now. That's interesting in the dynamic of age, because I wake up every morning thinking I'm 18 years old. I've recognized especially maybe it's in this small community, that the discussions are not necessarily happening in our formal government established mechanisms. They're happening on Facebook, they're happening on other social media, and they're healthy discussions, right? I have difficulty keeping up, but bits and pieces of this or that I hear, that I read about, there's some merit in some of the things. And so I just want, at least today for the citizens, we've got something, it's on, you said it was posted at our website, right? The City of Marque website or not?
It posted on the city website. Like I said, if council wants
Well, I'm just
to allow that
asking,
option now.
just ask people, take a look at it, read it, as we're going to have this opportunity, and let's have some healthy discussions, and as we formalize this in some fashion.
Thank you. Workshop, Carlson, yes or no?
Yes, sir. Workshop.
Ms. McCullough, yes or no?
I'm in favor of a workshop, and I would say, I would really like to see at that workshop, just some price comparisons and maybe some suggestions from staff around other measures that get the same effect apart from the speed bump. Because I will say that is one of the things I have come up in these discussions reading is speed bumps might not be the answer, but the fear is there.
Yes,
and the
ma'am.
problem is there.
Yes, ma'am.
So yeah.
All right, that's direction. Item 4B.
Mayor, can I add one thing to this real quick? before we
Yes, sir,
move on?
you most certainly can.
So we'll get the workshop put together and then you guys can change whatever you want to change. But it kind of feels like 2 meetings ago, there was a discussion about wanting speed humps. So council said, give us a way to do it. So we did. Might not have been exactly what council wanted, might not have been in the format council wanted, but there was an opportunity for people to come in and request within 3 days. There was an opportunity for people to come in and request a speed hump. We came back to the next council meeting and council said, okay, we don't like some of the things that are in there. So we changed those things. So we can continue to change it. But I just want to point out that you asked us to do something 3 days later, there was a mechanism to do it. It might not have been exactly what everybody wanted. And we can get to that point where we get what everybody wants, but it was there 3 days later. I don't think that's such a bad thing. And we'll get to exactly what everybody wants. So we can workshop, we can have meetings in the park. I don't care what mechanism you guys want to use to get to the final product. But 3 days after you asked for it, you had it. Whether it was exactly what you wanted or not, there was a mechanism there for people to come in and request it. So I just want to point that out.
Okay. I want to say thank you to everybody. We've already done together collectively. We did this when we worked on the city commission and everything. So we've got a template. We had that transparency, right, and input. So that's all that we can proceed. And we've got a new member of board, and he can contribute as well as that effort. But thank you.
Mr. Jackson, I appreciate that you had something in place 3 days later, certainly. But one of the sticking points the emphasis that I'm trying to bring us to understand is, number one, the 400 vehicles are still in that document, and that's the most ludicrous for me part of the document. Not saying anything about you all's judgment, just saying it's ludicrous to me. And secondly, what you will continue to feel is frustration that as the people want things, it seems like they're not receiving the things that they want. And that perhaps might be reflected moving forward, that people just simply want the council to direct the staff and the manager to do things that will immediately impact their lives without any red tape or any extra added bureaucracy or any slowdown or any dropping of the ball or anything like that. And that's just a shift in the way that that this government will move. It's not personal against you or Dira or anything like that. This is what I have been feeling in my time of campaigning. Perhaps Mr. Carlson might be able to say the same. I don't know what happened in Joe and Casey's election, but the people are frustrated. And so what you'll get from me is I will voice their frustrations until we move this council in a way that the people feel as though they are being represented adequately and in a timely fashion. That's all this is about. Nothing personal. It's just the people want their government back. And for whatever reason they feel they don't. Not that you did anything or anybody in the room anything. It's just the sentiment in the community. And I've heard this hundreds of times on the campaign trail, and I'm trying to reflect that. Nothing personal. We're just moving forward. 4B.
4B is an update from the consulting traffic engineer on the impact analysis for 4975 Gulf Freeway. Can you put him through, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, he's on.
Good evening, council. Can you hear me?
Hold on a second. We're going to turn you up a little bit.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
One more time.
Okay, can you hear me, council? Okay, I can't, it looks like you guys have been muted for me, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if you just wave with questions, and I guess we can unmute. My name is Tony Voigt. I'm with Voigt Associates. I'm a professional traffic engineer, and here at the behest of Mr. Denho of Attico, whom, from I understand, council had some questions about the Amazon traffic study that Kimley Horn conducted. I conducted a formal review of that study and provided comments to Mr. Ho. Just as a brief introduction, the coordination I had with Kimley Horn and the engineer from Kimley Horn was very good. They were very open with what they wanted to do with the traffic study, what they would be presenting. We worked cooperatively to go through some of the issues we were dealing with at the time with COVID, some of the traffic issues that presented, and getting that reflected into the traffic study. Mr. Ho didn't really give me any indication of what the discussion or significant points of clarification that council may need this evening. So I'm going to be brief with my remarks and kind of open it up to questions or discussion that you might have for me.
I think, did you just say you were going to give us a brief review? Did I hear Mark?
The review that I just gave about reviewing the traffic study, the traffic study met industry standard guidelines and practices. It seemed like they had good data to work with. I found no technical abnormalities with the traffic study. So are there any particular questions or topics of interest that mayor or council has or staff regarding this development and the traffic issues surrounding it?
Yes, sir. Could you first start off? We have, I'm sure, several questions. Give us the basic finding of the study, sir.
Okay.
For the public that perhaps is watching.
Okay, very good. So Kimley Horn and Associates did the traffic study. What they found is there were some improvements needed associated to mitigate the traffic impacts of the Amazon warehouse development. Primarily, a right turn lane on the frontage road, the southbound frontage road at Hallam. As Hallam Road is extended, and I think on the city maps, it's also called Casey, but Hallam Road is going to be extended between Delaney and the frontage road. And so there would be a southbound right turn lane from the frontage road onto Hallam. Hallam Road will carry most of the access to employee parking areas and the van departure areas. So I'm sure we've all seen the Amazon vans. This is one of their last mile facilities where they take packages out for delivery. The study also examined Delaney. It also looked at and left turn lanes, if left turn lanes southbound on Delaney would be warranted at Hallam or the site driveways. Left turn lanes were marginally warranted. And what we did, because of the uncertainty around the traffic volumes we were seeing, both with COVID and with the construction on I-45, because we didn't know exactly how the traffic patterns were being influenced by both of those activities. And then with the left turns being marginally warranted, what I recommended to Mr. Ho is that we watch those intersections for potential future mitigation. It really wasn't needed at this point, especially with the vast majority of Amazon's traffic focused on the frontage road. The study also went further south and looked at a traffic signal warrant at Delaney and FM 1765, but that traffic signal was not warranted at this time. As part of my comments, and I'll go ahead and just read this to council. I said, this development may not generate trips at such a magnitude to warrant a southbound left turn lane at the site driveway or at Hallam Road on Delaney. But with ongoing construction north of the subject site on I-45, there's uncertainty of how much detour traffic we're currently experiencing through the study network. And I also mentioned I was also concerned a little bit about how COVID was influencing trips. I said, but with additional growth, the intersection of Delaney at Hallam may warrant left turn lanes in the future and potentially may warrant a traffic signal. And I recommended that the city should monitor this intersection through periodic volume and crash studies to assess when left turn lanes and or a traffic signal may be warranted. So that's a high level overview of the traffic impact study and my review of the study. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Let's open this up to council. Let's see, who wants to go first? Casey or?
I mean, to be honest, I don't have a lot of specific questions. You know, this is, really out of my wheelhouse, and it seems the kind of thing that, and I'm so sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Tony Voigt.
Boy,
Mr. Boyd, thank you so much. So Din asked you to revisit it
Din
after.
asked me to review the traffic study and work with Kimley Horn, who conducted the traffic study. I specialize in these studies. I do them every day, and Din and I, Din calls on me occasionally to help him assess more complicated issues.
Okay. And so, nope, that's good. I'm good for now.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Mr. Boyd, I appreciate you addressing Delaney Cove, the Delaney Road. I do have kind of an issue with your recommendation as to no traffic lights right now there. And the reason why I say that is I see on social media all the time, people almost getting T-boned right at that intersection. And we haven't, Amazon hasn't even moved in yet. I don't know if we need to redo that traffic study or if the council and the city can go ahead and put a traffic light there, because all it's going to take is one person to die in a T-bone accident there, and people aren't going to be happy about it because it's something that could have been prevented. But I do appreciate your recommendation of no traffic light there. And from what it sounds like, most of the vehicles are going to be going, coming out of Amazon and going off of Howell onto the frontage road, correct?
That's correct. That's what Amazon indicated to Kimley Horn, who conducted the traffic impact analysis.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Mr. Boyd, thanks for I'm a visual person. Howell is which street?
Hallam. It's Hallam Road.
Hallam Road. Which is that the one that is between Abundant Life and the old Knights of Columbus building?
And
it didn't exist then.
It's being completed the rest of the way through. As part
Okay,
of this
all
project.
right. And that's going to be what, a 2-lane, or is it 4 lanes?
I think it's 2 lanes, correct?
I believe that's correct. I have their site plan. Actually, it's going to be a 3-lane section. It looks like 36 feet wide.
36. So there'll be a turning lane with the third.
Center
That's
turn
to
lane.
say that.
That's correct.
And so it'll be coming into, the flow will be through Delaney. Is that?
The primary flow to and from the site will be via the frontage road.
The frontage road.
Yes.
Okay. But you said something about access to employee parking.
Yes, most of the employee parking in the van parking area is via Hallam Road. They have 4 or 5 driveways along Hallam. They do have one driveway I think it's to employee parking on the west side of their tract. And so that would be the only access directly to Delaney from the site.
Did you, in your study or anybody, we've got an example of a similar Amazon warehouse facility that's not too old in Stafford. Has anybody taken a look at, by the way, I was going to go by there and just sit down and watch the traffic flow there, because it's along, I believe along Murphy Road to some extent, if I'm not mistaken. And Murphy Road's a very busy road, by the way. I'm happy knowing that area. So has anybody taken a look at that traffic flow? And if you know, Amazon is intended to be operated 24 hours a day. So there's going to be a shift there and full time, 24.
I would imagine they'll be loading and unloading the big trucks at night because they're not delivering at night.
Yeah.
So they'll probably refill the facility package at night, and then delivery trucks will take about.
And the big trucks are all going to be coming in once again through off the feeder road.
That's correct.
Okay, so has anybody taken a look at the Stafford? Because I'm curious about the traffic. And then last thing, are there any plans to widen, expand 1765? If you know.
To your first question about the Stafford hub, Amazon hub, I haven't gone over there and watched that hub. I have, however, watched the hub they have at State Highway 288 and the Beltway.
Okay.
Just east of the Beltway. And because, and I actually did the traffic study for that site, and because of that experience, I required Kimley Horn to do 4 analyses for this site. We wanted them to look at when the peak hour of Delaney and the frontage road occurs in the morning and the afternoon. And that's so two scenarios there. I also wanted them to look at when their facility is generating the most traffic, which is kind of later in the morning, 9 to 10 a.m. as their employees come in after the evening shift is over and the sort is done and the vans are loaded. They have employees that come in and pick up vans and go out. And then those vans usually come in between 7 and 8 in the evening. So we made them do 2 additional scenarios to look at those cases as well. Because they do work a little different. Their peak hours typically are not the same peak hours of the adjacent roadways that we see for commuting traffic. So in this case, we made them do some additional work to account for that. I do not personally know about improvements on FM 1765. I did talk to TxDOT about a year ago about the intersection of Delaney and 1765. At that time, they had no plans to do any modifications to that particular intersection or signalize it. But you know, that's something that Den and I can certainly look into with the Galveston area office or with the Houston district office to see if they've developed any projects in the last year.
Question, Abundant Life has a charter school there. What consideration has been given to, I'm assuming they're going to continue that, right? Will that still be a school there? Any consideration for the safety of children or parents dropping off kids there?
It wasn't explicitly considered in the study. I would say that the background data, if they weren't in school in the August, early September timeframe when they did data collection, we probably didn't account for that traffic. So I can't tell you that we explicitly accounted for that in this particular Kinley Horn analysis.
And having said that, I think, what's our, in planning, what's our backup? If we suddenly, once the facility is open, and we realize that we've got some challenges, say at Delaney in 1765, or the traffic flow, do we have any ability to say to Amazon, we'd like you to go ahead and have police stationed here to facilitate the entry and exit of traffic of your employees, just like they do at the plants, by the way, right along Texas Avenue and other areas. So is there some mechanism for that? I just want to be prepared, because already the Saltgrass people are very, very anxious about the traffic situation and the Delaney Cove as well, folks too.
So their site approval would have been is all based on the traffic study itself. So there would not be, I don't know if there's a contingency built in that for what if afterwards. I don't know that we can do that.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a regulatory mechanism for us to do that.
Public safety.
Well, so to clarify, we can certainly do certain things, institute a school zone, that sort of thing. We can't necessarily require a private property owner to spend public funds, spend funds on public improvements. That said, the owners have certainly been very cooperative thus far. And so if that became an issue, I don't know about the police helping. Generally, large facilities will do that to assist the traffic flow so that their employees can get in and out without internal complaints. So
Safely.
There's usually an internal push for that, and they'll end up paying for it on their own.
Exactly.
But yeah, and then bearing in mind this is a TxDOT road, so Tony might be able to speak to this more, but I don't know that we get the option of just saying we want to do this on the TxDOT road. We have some authority certainly, but it's limited.
Yeah, typically the trigger that you would have to institute additional mitigation measures is if they came back in for permitting or a change in land use.
Absolutely. If they did any additions, remodels, change the use, we could certainly do something at that point, to the point of potentially requiring an additional traffic study.
And what final thing, refresh my memory. If the employee anticipated number of employees at the facility are what, 400?
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 450.
450. Are there going to be, if any efforts to encourage carpooling or access to some sort of public transit or things of that nature? I'm just wondering.
I have not heard of any. They are a very progressive company, so they sure may. But I've not specifically heard of any pushes along those lines. I mean, that's way down in the weeds compared to where we've been.
How large is the charter school? Like, I don't know what their attendance is like, their enrollment.
It's at this point, I would say less than 100 because of COVID. And I'm saying that because my daughter goes to this school and she goes virtually. But it can get into the hundreds when under regular circumstances.
So it does seem like something we should consider.
Absolutely.
If what Mr. Boyd said is true, that likely if kids were not in, you said August, September timeframe is when the data was collected for this study. Seems like that could definitely be affected in the future.
Sure. Mayor, what time did your daughter go to school?
She goes virtually.
Oh, well, what time did it start when she went in person? Do you remember 8:30ish, 8 o'clock?
7:30-ish.
Yeah, so it sounds like the times are still going to stagger.
Right. So that's one of the things that Amazon is very particular about is their startup times are somewhere around 10 o'clock in the morning. They get their drivers out to the facility and then headed out after the morning rush is already over. Sounds like the school time rush is probably about the same as the work time rush. And then they bring their drivers in after the nighttime rush is over. Most of the drivers get back. I mean, you guys have all probably had Amazon deliveries at your house at 8, 8:30, 9 o'clock. You know, so they do that on purpose so that they don't have an impact on traffic. They're trying not to impact traffic any more than they need to. So I mean, we surely, once they go back to school, it may warrant that, but I don't really think it's gonna happen.
Well, it seems like the kind of thing we can't really like, talk about too much until it's
we see
an
it.
issue, if it becomes an issue, which hopefully it won't. I'm comfortable with the way they stagger those times and how that clearly is to accommodate local traffic. And then, Mr. Carlson, your comment about a lot of almost T-bones there, and you said on social media, how are people reporting? You mean like people are just saying like, oh, I almost just got T-boned?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. They're putting it up on the social media sites for Delaney Cove saying, hey, something needs to be done because I almost just got hit coming out of Delaney Cove. And Dare, if I could, did you say, or I'm assuming you're saying 1765 is Tech Stop, correct?
Correct.
Delaney Cove is not, or Delaney Road is not. That's our
Correct.
property. That's our responsibility. Okay, I just want to make sure.
You know, one other thought that may be part of the issue right now with this, and I don't know, maybe Mr. Point can address this too. Currently, the construction people that are in there, the only access they have right now is off of Delaney Road because Hallam has not been completed yet. So all the traffic is utilizing Delaney right now. You've got the tech stock construction that's pushing extra people down Delaney as well.
Correct.
Once Hallam gets completed, they won't be doing that. They'll be coming in from the other direction. And so we may be looking at a month or two. I mean, they're working on Hallam pretty quickly right now. We may be looking at another month or so, all that construction traffic coming in the other way now and alleviating whatever issues they're causing on Delaney. That's not going to alleviate issues tech stock construction is causing on Delaney right now, which are going to last another year and a half, possibly. But it would alleviate any issues with the actual construction crews because they would be coming in the other way, I would assume. And I know they're working on that road pretty quick, so I would assume that road will be done pretty soon. So I think that's going to alleviate a bunch of it too.
Hopefully.
So it may be
Hopefully if they follow what Amazon says, coming in off Hallam. But if they come off Delaney though, we're still going to have an issue. I mean, you can tell everyone, hey, come in off Hallam, but everybody knows there's going to be one or twos that be like, oh, I don't want to wait 20 minutes, so I'm going to go Delaney. So, but I agree with the 45 expansion. Yes, we're going to be eating that traffic for next year.
Question follow up. The Delaney overpass will be going away, right?
Correct.
That's going away. I think they're already constructing the
that intersection gets redone a lot.
of 45. But the exit then where's the exit going to be for Delaney and this Amazon? Where is that anticipated? Do we know? Off of 45.
The exit stays about the same, if I remember right. It just gets reshaped.
Correct. The exit's going to stay. They're just going to reshape it and put a retention pond in that area.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes, Mayor.
I need you to refresh me a little bit so that I can ask you the right questions. Who do you work for?
I work for Voigt Associates. I'm a sole proprietor.
Okay. And you were asked to do what by whom?
I was asked by Mr. Denho of Attico to review the Kimley Horn traffic study for the Amazon site.
Yes, sir. And Kinley Home was contracted by who?
By the realty company that was representing Amazon in the development.
Okay.
I think it was Duke Realty.
And so I assume it's within your area of expertise to review traffic studies or to conduct traffic studies. How would you characterize your business?
I have been doing traffic studies of all sorts for about 25 years now.
Okay. So, and I'm asking, I don't know this, but I'm asking again to get information. In your history, would you say that the majority of the traffic studies that you participated in studied traffic at its greatest potential impact? Yes or no?
at not only at its greatest potential impact, and that can be couched in two ways. It's the greatest impact to the adjacent roadway system, as well as the greatest impact of trips generated by the development. And in this case, as I referred to a while ago, that's why usually we would do a weekday morning and a weekday afternoon scenario. But in this case, since I personally had done traffic studies for Amazon hubs, I said, we're going to have 2 other periods where the facility itself is going to be generating its most traffic. And so we added those scenarios into their analysis requirements as well.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Boyd. Would you say then that the operation of Abundant Life Christian School would be impactful in your study, yes or no?
I'm going to say potentially, but I think the potential is very low. And the reason why I say that is from the information that Amazon gave us during the 7 to 8 a.m. hour, their site is generating very, very few trips, like less than 10. In the afternoon parent pickup hour for the school, if that's anywhere between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock, their site is generating very few trips. Their site generates the most trips between 9 and 10:30, and then again later at 7 to 8 o'clock in the evening.
I appreciate that, but would you say that a traffic study is scientific or no?
I would say that it is the application of science, certainly.
Certainly, then, Mr. Boyd, we would have to make sure that all the variables would be in place, correct?
Certainly with some engineering judgment used towards the study.
Right, and if that's true, let me stop in the middle of this and say I'm certainly in favor of Amazon and the development. And certainly I just want to make sure that we're doing the best for our citizens. So this has nothing to do with that. I love Amazon and I love what we're doing. But I just want to make sure that we're drilling down in a way that we're caring for our citizens. Now, I heard you say earlier that September or I believe you said August or September, you all did this study. Did I hear you say that correctly?
Kinley Horde conducted the study. We started scoping in early August, and I believe they conducted this study as far as data collection in late August. And they presented the study to us early September.
Was that 2020?
Yes, sir.
So that was a pandemic?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we didn't necessarily know that we would be realizing the normal operation of a school system. And so here's what I would like to say. I'll leave it there. I think the point has been proven. I think that I would like for us to work together. I would like for us to be open to answering some of the concerns of our citizenry. When I say work together, I mean that we would be able to go into the community to answer the questions that are going to be presented by the citizens according to this traffic study. So that's what I'm saying when I say work together. Perhaps we might be able to invite you to help our citizens understand. Maybe there might be a meeting that you might be able to help answer some of those questions, a town hall meeting as relates to the traffic study.
I'd be happy to, yeah. And Mayor, just so that I'm clear, Kinley Horn did adjust the morning and late evening volumes that were collected in August of 2020 by a factor of 123% to account for the impacts of COVID. So they did adjust for that variable as best they could based on historic traffic volumes in the area.
So the last question that I have for you, Mr. Boyd, when traffic studies are completed, how are they normally disseminated or dispersed? Who would normally get a copy of those?
For development?
Yes, sir.
The permitting agency would typically receive those studies for review as part of the permitting process.
So you're suggesting that we already have that study within our government?
I'm assuming so, but Mr. Ho would probably have to confirm that.
Thank you.
You're
Anybody
welcome.
else have any questions?
Just one follow-up, sir.
Go ahead.
Last question I have, I'm sorry, sir. Did you guys take into account the Abundant Life Church and the traffic from that?
I think Kimley Horn accounted for that in the traffic counts that they conducted in August of 2020. I'm not sure that they counted. I'm pretty sure they did not count church driveways or school driveways on that site.
Appreciate it. Thanks, sir. No more questions, sir.
Thank you. At some point, let me ask council, let me poll council, would we like to review this traffic study as a council? Would we like copies of this study?
I don't know if I need a copy of the study so much as I think it's a great idea to make it available for people and allow for discussion if people that are living in that area have questions and have an expert on hand to answer that, whether it's, I don't know if it necessarily needs to be an entirely separate meeting just for that, or if it's just a more highly publicized portion of a future workshop, or maybe something that we have in sort of the, gearing up for Amazon to actually be here. I'm sure there'll be a number of things we're doing, but I support that idea. I don't know if I would necessarily have all the right engineering eyes to even understand the traffic study.
Sure.
Ms. Clausen, I don't think I need a copy of it. However, if we could put it on the website as far as breaking it down so the citizens can see, hey, this is done, but break it into a form where they could understand versus a scientific or technical aspect of it.
Sure. Ms. Cabrian.
So, I'm curious about everything. I'd love to see the study. But I'm more interested in all the maps, just to visualize the property, right? The outline of the streets and things of that nature. And I think that's where a lot of the residents, as I said, in Saltgrass, some of the homeowner association meetings that I've been to, that's the questions that come up. They're having a hard time visualizing all the traffic. And they're already making assumptions, but at the same breath, just like you said, Mayor, we all love Amazon coming to town, right? That's an asset for our community as well too. So we can all be good neighbors, I think.
And certainly this is not about Amazon as much as this is about the theme of tonight. The citizens want to know the machinations of their government. And that will be a continuing theme, I suspect, here in the near future. Certainly, sounds like we are going to take this individually. If you all want to visit with Mr. Jackson and view the study personally, I encourage you to do so. It doesn't sound like that we want him to present that to us in any official way. So we've gotten past that, Mr. Jackson. Now we're at 5A.
5A, Mr. Getty.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Included in your packet this evening is the next step in our Streetscape project we've been working on for a number of years. The design and preliminary budget came before Council in July of 2019. And since that point, the engineers have gone to work and designed it, et cetera. And so now we're at the point of needing to hire the contractors to actually do the work. So it's really going to be done in two phases. I noted in my backup information here about the bond program itself. So backing up a little bit even from that, the EDC worked with the Texas Coastal Watershed Program, which is a program through Texas A&M. And basically their program is about resiliency, how you're able to use the bones that you have instead of kind of mitigate urban sprawl a little bit. And so it was determined that we have a great viable downtown, particularly Monday through Friday, but on nights and weekends it's a little slow. So how do we continue to improve our downtown? And according to that study, we need to make it more walkable, bikeable, et cetera. And so you'll see in the county's program They're gonna be putting in the bulb outs and things that were recommended in that initial study. This here has to do with after the county is done, these are the blue light poles and the pavers and things that we're gonna do outside of the scope of the county project. So any questions that you have, I'll try to answer them.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Getty?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Getty, you said something that kind of struck a quick chord with me because, I attended as many as I could, what was it, the charrette so associated by Texas A&M on the discussion of this effort to create our, let's call it our old Marque, like the old Springtown in terms of a destination. Quick question though, and this is a comment. On our side as the counselors for the city, elected counselors, quick things that come up. How do they find the money to put in poles and things of that nature when they can't even find the money to repair a street or fix a pothole or things of that nature? And having said that, I would like our residents of Lamarck to be very clear that in the process of this development, there's been contributions by the Economic Development Corporation. Am I accurate in saying that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in fact, as part of this effort to finance and proceed with these improvements, there have been other bond amounts like the county money that will be available to facilitate this development of this area. So to be clear, the funding that's associated with this particular item is not from our general revenue.
Great point. Yes.
Okay, that I just want, because I don't want, like I say, our citizens to say, oh, they found that. And so this is something that's been, you understand where I'm going on it?
Absolutely.
Does it make sense?
Absolutely.
And so that's my point there. Number two, in the bid from Crescent, which I'm glad is a local company, by the way, and keep our local folks employed. It talks about installing 15 pole bases. Now, in that regard, I'm disappointed in yourself, and I'm a visual person. I'd like to know what are the poles. I went to our website, and you've got the streetscape photograph here, and it has some very modern-looking pole lamps here, a variety of them. And I don't know if these are the same ones that we're talking about being installed here.
Yeah, you can see 3 of them on the ground already in front of Art of Coffee.
Oh, okay.
They're the blue poles.
Oh,
The bases are the concrete bases that they're actually attached to meet windstorm certification.
Okay, and so that includes the ones with you can install the little, what is it, announcements as well, like here, the one that's on your website.
So there's going to be 15 of the poles that are a lot like the ones, they're actually going to be identical to the ones that are installed at 401 Laurel, which is Art of Coffee.
Okay.
Then there's going to be 4 additional poles that are going to be a little bit larger and taller. We'll be able to hang banners across the street at Laurel and First. So yes, the message for whether it's a downtown event or whatever it may be.
And I think those are the ones that are the 4 taller poles at the intersection, correct?
Yes, correct.
And the lights associated, you called it a blue light, but are these are intended to be LED lights?
They're LEDs. The poles are actually a marine blue.
Okay. Oh, I see.
The color of the pole.
The color of the pole is blue. Okay. All right. But they're LED, and I'm glad to hear that as well too. And then it also says provide stop sign poles. So we're getting rid of the blinking light that's there, and then installing a 4-way stop sign there. Is that what the plan is?
Ultimately, yes, sir. I'm hoping that the city takes down that light. It hadn't been real effective, but yes, we're gonna put some poles in, some stop sign poles, and it's gonna have the Laurel and First signage at the top that'll fit more with the theme that we're going with.
Okay, all right. And these pavers that the paving, that's something that Crescent is going to be doing?
They're general contracting it for us.
Oh, they're general. So okay.
Yes, sir.
I see. And all right, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Carlson.
Only question I have is the alternate for traffic control.
So when they do the pavers, they've got to start in the center of the intersection at Laurel and First. You can't do it like you're pouring concrete where you can go to one side and then the other. So they're going to have to potentially have traffic control out there so they can start from the middle to start laying the pavers at that intersection. And it's going to take several weeks.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's the only question I have.
Ms. McCollum.
No questions at this time for me. It was clear. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm excited about the next phase of this moving
We are
forward.
too.
Alex.
Yes, sir.
Let's certainly I support this. This is key to our opportunity to revitalize our downtown. But we need to make sure that we're being transparent. And let me say that part of this funding comes from our Galveston County Bond Street Improvement Program, correct?
Yes, sir. At one time, the city had about $1.73 million allocated out of the $80 million 2017 bond referendum.
Right.
And there was an opportunity to match, so we put $1 million towards it, 3.73. This portion, the 590 that we're talking about now, there are cash reserves that the EDC have.
Right. So here's what I want you to crystallize for us. Now, just really quickly. So we're putting a tremendous investment in pavers in this area, right? And so some folk might say, well, we could have did this or that on a different street or another street, right? That's probably would be the natural reaction. But it's important for us to revitalize downtown because of what? Why is this an investment that will pay off in the long run?
Well, you look at cities across the state and the nation. You know, right now, I-45 expanding, higher traffic counts, and the city of Marque developed kind of in phases. Our downtown, we don't have the county seat with the county courthouse on the square. Initially, the city of Marque developed by the rail. And so what happens is if you don't take care of your downtown, you see blight and you see just overall things that will happen that aren't good for a growing and prospering city like Lamarck is. Right. And so we're just investing in it because, like I said earlier, there's a tremendous amount of daytime, Monday through Friday activity, a lot of jobs created downtown. Nights and weekends, not so much, but you know, we just want to continue to make it an economic driver and make it a place, and we're just trying to create that place right now.
So that we can continue to generate sales tax, higher property values,
Correct.
property tax, which will then in turn allow us to repair and replace more streets, right? Right. So this is an investment so that it'll pay off later on with better infrastructure, perhaps.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted you to point that out so that we can get that question answered as it relates to why are we doing what we're doing with our streets in the downtown.
Sure.
So thank you. Does anybody have any other questions for Alex?
One follow-up. With the revitalization, I know the Art of Coffee is the only one in that whole section. Is there any possibilities for other businesses coming in?
Absolutely. There's two spaces there. Art of Coffee has about 2,000 square feet. We've got about 2,700 additional square feet. And that finished up, and just to kind of give you a timeline, Art of Coffee opened up, and then 2 weeks later, the pandemic hit. And so it's been tough to locate restaurants into spaces over the last 14 months. And so it's been a challenge, but yes, our goal is for that to be a restaurant, sandwich shop, something. And as we remodeled the exterior, we put some things in place to try to attract a restaurant. But as you'll see with the result of the pandemic, I think you'll see new restaurant spaces that they develop, even your larger casual sit-down restaurants. I think you're going to see a drive-through start taking place because with the pandemic, you know, they were having to rent tents, and you have a lot of to-go business already. Why not make it easier for your employees and your customers? So I think you're going to kind of start seeing a transition too in the way restaurants are built potentially. But to answer your question succinctly, yes, sir, absolutely.
Is the EDC pushing towards that? Trying to get businesses into those spaces so it's not empty?
Absolutely.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, excuse me, what, Alex, this is, talk about development, and you mentioned it. I was sitting there, I think I was at the post office, or maybe I was going to Benito's. But anyway, I was in that area. And I suddenly heard the blaring horn of the train coming by. And I thought to myself, I really have never been this close to hear that that horn going. And you know what came to my mind is, in my other life, I've lived in parts of Houston that would be considered, certainly unlike Lamarck. And it came to my mind, and I thought, they don't blare the horn coming through those parts of town. They have developed other, the street crossing things effective that come down, and it avoids, and the lights perhaps, but that blaring horn, and I just would like perhaps the same treatment that they give to other areas, that if the citizens want that in that area, I would like to get a good night's sleep if I lived in that area, or that.
I think it'd be a good place for a pizza shop.
That too. Yeah.
Got the Pizza Brothers down there. They're pizza.
So I just made that, I had to just bring that up.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'll be happy to talk to you about trains and horns after this.
Anything else for Alex?
No.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson.
Item 5B, the Painted Meadows PID discussion, Mr. Getty.
Thank you, sir. I believe on the Zoom, we have Randy Hall and Rick Rosenberg that will best be able to speak about what they're doing with PID 1 here in section 3, 4, and 5. Mr. Hall, are you available?
I am, Alex. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Mayor Bell, council members, and members of staff, thank you for your time tonight. For the record, my name is Randall Hall, Randall Hall, and I represent the developer of Painted Meadows and also the borrower under the proposed refinance that we're undertaking. Texas PID Financing 2, I think, is the legal name. Just a quick overview. I know, Mayor Bill, you've been involved in many discussions with Painted Meadows over the years, but we started the project in 2003. And at that time, there was no really growth in the city. And when we approached the city about creating a special finance district, the city's position at that point was, we haven't had any growth since Omega Bay in the 70s, I guess it was. Would you consider not selling bonds? And we analyzed that, and we said, of course, how would that work? We would then have to go and finance the infrastructure, privately. And that's what we've done over the last, 21 years now. And unlike Delaney Cove that sells bonds and the other districts that, have had the luxury of selling bonds, we've had to finance these things out of pocket or, with private lenders. What we're doing tonight with the bank is what we've done, Alex, I don't know how many times over the last 20 years, half a dozen, maybe 10, where we finance these public improvement district funds. And at this time, we're refinancing to achieve a much lower rate with a bank, NBH Bank, which I believe is a Colorado-based, very large bank that's not really familiar with special finance districts. And their attorneys have said, can we get the city council just to acknowledge that, we are putting these agreements in place that we put in place and are allowed to put in place through our financing agreement with the city. In the past, the PID board has always done this. In this case, this bank that's new to Texas has asked that the council just acknowledge the consents that are before you. I will say there have never been, nor will there be any exposure to the city. The city's never been asked for any funds, public funds, for the benefit of Painted Meadows. Again, I'll reiterate, these have all been private funds that we have used to develop the project. And as Alex pointed out in his memo, the project is fully developed. We're very proud of the job we've done, and it did kick off the growth on the west side and drove a lot of the retail out there. So I'll open it up for questions. Mr. Rosenberg is a PID consultant if there are any questions on the PIDs, but just to summarize, this is simply a refinance of existing debt that we've had on sections 3, 4, and now putting debt on 5 for the infrastructure of Painted Meadows. And we would hope that you would give your approval for this. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Does council have any questions for Mr. Hall?
I do with three. This public improvement district, you said something, Mr. Hall, about a PID board. Does it exist?
Yes, sir. It's the EDC board. Mr. Crowder is the chairman. It's that.
PID board for this is our EDC?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yes.
It was the council's pleasure. They asked the EDC board to be the PID board.
Okay. And in the creation of this public improvement policy, and I was trying to track down some information, Tink, as you know, and I didn't see I understand the assessments that occur, and but I did not get a copy of the service and assessment plan. Does it exist? Who has that? Carlton, who has that, Mr. Hall?
It does exist. The city has a copy of it. We also have a copy of it. That was part of the creation process way back in 2003. That was part of the entire PID package, if you will, which included the service and assessment plan, PID financing agreement, all those type things. But it does exist, and the city has a copy.
And including the PID petition, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Now, question for you. Having not seen that original agreement, I'm curious as to, and for our residents and the public, a public improvement district is a tool that was permitted to be created by a municipality such as Lamarque that didn't have a lot of money, and there was an interest in developing an area, right? In some instances, perhaps an area that was not so great for development. And correct me if I'm saying something wrong here, or Mr. Hall. Now, in this case, this was used to create the Painted Meadows development. And in that process, there's an assessment that is charged to the Painted Meadows residents for this public improvement district. And who's collecting that? Is that being collected by our appraisal district? Who's collecting that?
No, sir. The PID assessor collector is Assessors of the Southwest.
And so you've got a entity that's managing this.
Yes, sir. They're the tax collector.
Okay, all right. And they collect the funds and they're remitting them to
the finance department.
Over here, the finance department
disperses the funds.
And the finance department then in turn disperses them back to the, in effect, the development company.
Correct.
Okay.
Whoever has the PID.
Whoever has that.
Yes, sir.
Now, there's a statement here in section 3 that I'm not quite understanding, but it seems to me that it creates a liability on the city of Lamarque. And once again, not having seen the original agreement, I don't know the language there, but section 5 here says, the city agrees to pay and costs to be paid to the lender any and all amounts owed to PMPR pursuant to the development agreement in accordance with section 9 below. And that section 9, well, the total amount is for purposes here, the project costs are $1.8 million. And it says the city hereby acknowledges, agrees that in the event of any default by PMPR under the development agreement, the city will continue to reimburse the approved and accepted project costs listed in section 6 immediately below, together with the interest thereon, to the lender from assessment for the project that have been accumulated in the Public Improvement District Fund and or the Revenue Fund with respect to the Section 3 development, as such monies become available. Sure. Now, I asked a question. Normally, when I see the top of the statement, a developer in default, there's some sort of bankruptcy petition that's involved in it. And yet, if there's a bankruptcy petition involved, or there possibly could be, you're asking the city to continue making these payments to a lender?
It's a good question, but to answer your question, no. The Texas or Tech PID receivable, the entity that you mentioned a moment ago, that is an entity that's set up as a special purpose entity whose sole purpose is to enter into the financing agreement with the bank. It is what an attorney would call a bankruptcy remote entity. It has no ongoing business. The only business that it conducts every year is the pass through from the city straight to the lender of the funds that are due to the lender. So when you see that, and I know what you're probably thinking, oh, you've got a development that's underway and they're borrowing millions of dollars and putting streets and utilities and parks, et cetera, in. That's not the case here. There's no ongoing development activity, and the entity that actually is the borrower is what is called a bankruptcy remote entity. It has 3 directors that they sign an agreement that said they will not put the entity into bankruptcy because, again, it doesn't have any activity other than to act as the entity that is borrowing the money and borrowing the money from NBH Bank. It's a good question, but it's not a possibility.
So there's no, what I'm hearing is that the city of Lamarque and we as its counselors, as its elected officials here, we're not assuming any additional obligation by accepting this, by agreeing to this document here.
That's a good question, but you are not assuming any liability, and you haven't had any liability under the PID agreement either. So you're not adding anything to it.
All right. Since I haven't seen it, that's why I'm asking the question. I haven't seen it. I wanted to be sure that the city of Marque and its residents are not assuming any financial responsibility. And I would still like to see the agreement. I would like to know what is covered. What are the responsibilities of the developer? What are they doing? Things of that nature. Because as I recall, didn't we have a situation out in, was it Painted Meadows or it's in my district over there, or was it the next development about some water main that was broken or stuff like that? It was a nearby. Wasn't there something that you talked about?
Inside the subdivision?
Or was it West Side? Maybe that was it. Okay. Oh, that's the next one. That's the next one. Yeah. So,
but let me point out that the development work was actually finished, I believe, in 2019 or 18. So the service and assessment plan that you'll receive a copy of, and Alex, I believe you have that. It'll show the water and sewer work that was projected over the life of the PID. But again, there are no development activities. We developed the last section. We wish we had another Painted Meadows. It was a very successful project for the city and the residents, and for the development company. But we're out of land, and the lots are fully developed. So yes, the service and assessment plan will answer the questions of what was projected to be developed and to be built. But I'll say again, there are no ongoing development activities, nor have there been for the last 2 or 3 years. This is simply a refinance of debt that we have put in place years ago, and we're just trying to achieve a much lower interest rate. That's all we're doing. It's no different if you're familiar with the municipal utility district that has sold bonds within the city of Lamarque to refinance their bond debt. In this case, we're a private lender that we've loaned this out of pocket, and we're simply trying to take advantage of a lower interest rate. So this is something, as Alex can confirm, that the PID board has approved per our financing agreement with the city. We have the right and the ability to do this, and we have done it many times in the past. We're simply have been asked for the city council to acknowledge it, not the PID board.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. And one last question, to be clear as well. There are no other public improvement districts in the city of Lamarque.
So we have, right?
There's not any active. We had one that started but never actually got set up.
Okay.
You maybe remember, Mayor Pro Tem, what would have been maybe a year ago, we had another developer who did come before council asking for a creation of a PID. Council did not approve that. Did not approve that PID. And getting to your one comment or question that you asked a while ago on the liability part, it's been 272 of these or something done around Texas. There is one that did go default and the city did get something out of that. So that's why we stepped away from the one that came up about a year ago. So there is liability when they're brand new and nothing's been done. This was fully developed. All they're trying to do is refinance the debt, save everybody money. So that's
And
good.
again, the only reason it came in front of us because of the new financial institution that you are refinancing with. It's a-
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Good deal. All right, Mr.
Okay.
Hall.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for yours, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Have a good evening.
You too. Item 5C, Mr. Jackson.
Discussion relating to adopting ordinance number O-2021-0010, establishing the method of calculation of the increment for TERS 2 as the taxable value approach pursuant to section 311.012 of the Texas Tax Code. Susie, you want to talk about that real quick?
Yes, sir. Good evening, council. This is relating to the Omega Bay subdivision. Established the TERS. We, based on council's approval 2 years ago, we allocated $15,000 for the TERS, but that was before the TERS was created. Then afterwards, the TERS was created at the TERS board, and we did an ordinance on that. So, but the original ordinance did not specifically say which method that you can apply for the calculation. So by default, Galveston County Tax Office just used the assessed value method. However, if we use that, it would not give the Omega Bay TERS money for the 2020 tax year. Therefore, per Ms. Cheryl Johnson's advice would be, okay, we can have council to approve a specific calculation method, which is the taxable value method. Then the Galveston County Tax Office can apply that, and that would allow us to allocate some money to the Omega Bay TERS subsequent years, and including the year 2020. So that is why we're bringing to council for your authorization for us to move forward.
So the switch is from market value to appraised value.
To taxable value.
Taxable value?
Assessed value to taxable
Assessed value. Okay. Does council have any questions?
Good. Well, does that mean that Omega Bay is getting more money?
They're getting, with the switch of the calculation method, that would give them roughly around $8,500 for tax year 2020. Now, each year will be different based on the value being, taxable.
But yes,
So
it's,
yes,
it's going
the answer
from,
is yes.
they were getting none to now they're getting 8,500.
Now they're getting 8,500. So that
Let's make it clear, Omega Bay is not getting it, the TERS.
The
the
TERS.
TERS, I'm
It's
sorry, the TERS.
That is
And
correct.
that in turn, the TERS is, they're able to utilize that funding for something or what?
For street
For
improvement.
street improvements, right?
Correct.
And so there's a need for this. Is that what I'm understanding?
That is correct.
The creation of the TERS was specifically because they came to us wanting to develop it so they could do their own street
Their own
repairs.
streets. Okay, well, I'm sorry.
So you said the taxable value.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's the same as the appraised value, correct?
No, that's not the same as the appraised
Assessed
value.
value.
Or assessed value, I'm sorry, the assessed value, that's the
Still,
same.
it's not the same.
The taxable value is the higher of the two numbers.
Okay,
So it is the one that will provide the most revenue for Omega Bay,
okay.
for the TERS.
And are we sure that's the calculation that's gonna be, they're gonna get 8,700 roughly?
That's not, well, that's 1 year. Every year will be
Well,
different.
correct, but
Right.
are
But
we
this is
positive
what-
100% this is gonna be what they get this year?
It's 85, it's right at 85.
Or
It's
do,
around 8,500.
It's
That was Ms. Johnson's calculation.
Yeah.
to give us
Just
a
a
reference.
She hasn't run the actual calculation because we haven't given her this mechanism to do it yet. That's what her estimate was.
gotcha, okay, appreciate it, thank you.
And then remember, as we talked about, Mayor and I were out there, Mr. Carlson, you were there at their HOA meeting. Each year, any new improvements that they build, and there's been some new houses built out here, that full value of that then goes to the TERS. But as the values increase, that incremental increase also goes to them as well. So theoretically, it's 8,500 for tax year 2019, 2020.
2020.
It's 85 for 2020, but each year it's an incrementally get bigger.
Thanks, sir.
But the city is held harmless. The city always gets the same amount of money they were getting at the time that the turf was developed.
Appreciate it. Thanks, sir.
So again, taxable value versus appraised value, taxable being the higher. And this TERS is because their streets are private. They have no way of maintaining those streets with any city revenue because they're private, right?
Yes, sir.
So this is a way that we're trying to help our community maintain their streets.
Yes, sir.
Just trying to get it clear so that everybody listening can hear a layman's version of what we're trying to do.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
You did a good job there, Ms. Cool. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just a quick, I just need,
Mhm.
the TERS has a finite period,
30 years?
it's a 30-year term or what?
I want to say it's 40. I have to check the
Maybe it
ordinance
was
again,
40.
but
I
it
think 40
definitely
is right.
it definitely has a finite term.
Yeah.
Yes.
It has a finite term. And so I've just, God knows, if I live 40 years, that'll be a miracle there, right? But what's the plan? What is the plan if that happens? What happens then?
I think the idea is for the TERS to allow the increment to build up over time.
Yeah.
It might take many years to get there, but there will be a point where the TERS will have sufficient money to start doing road improvements. Council has the ability, future councils, to extend the TERS, potentially issue bonds, though that TERS was not set up to issue bonds. And so I think maybe the council at the time was of the opinion that they wanted to set aside money, but in a way that didn't harm the other citizens. So it was this careful balance.
But if at some point this council or any other council for that matter makes a decision, we really want to really do something dynamic infrastructure wise, and let's go out and have a referendum on a bond, it's within our power within that bond. If the council decides there's something that will be included for Omega Bay, notwithstanding the TERS agreement. Is that accurate to say?
It would need to be placed in the TERS. The council at any time can add additional funding to the TERS.
Oh, that you're saying if there's a bond is approved, there's something in there that's been allocated for some improvement in Omega Bay, and it's approved, we would have to take that portion that's approved for Omega Bay and send it to the TERS.
Potentially. I think what you're saying is just, if council wanted to do something with infrastructure, could you? Potentially, yes. Now there's ways to not use the TERS, and then there's ways for the TERS to issue bonds off its own increment, which don't necessarily have the same impact on the city from a fiscal perspective. So I think that's why lots of cities look at that option. It is very difficult to try to do something in the TERS besides what it was set up to do.
And the TERS, by the way, for our residents, the tax
increment reinvestment zone.
Tax increment reinvestment zone.
Right. You basically froze the taxes the city was receiving in 2019.
Yeah.
And then anything that is growth over that amount goes into the increment fund to be used for road repairs, but the city continues to get the same amount of tax that you did in 2019 for all the future years.
And Omega Bay, council in your area, they still receive our waste services, right? The water and
right.
Well, the
The
water
water.
comes from.
Oh, that's the well.
The water and
Or
sewer
another-
through the mud.
Oh, to the mud out there.
Yeah, they get fire, police, they get our trash services. Our code enforcement officers work out there.
Okay.
Basically, the TERS doesn't change their status within the city. They're still members of the city. They're just recognized as kind of an area that had a special need that was best met by this funding mechanism.
Okay. Let's see. Thanks.
Anything else? Thank you, Ms. Coop. Item 5D, Mr. Jackson.
Discussion relating to ordinance number O-2021-0008, amending chapter 71 zoning of the city code of ordinances by repealing the thoroughfare overlay zoning district and adopting two new commercial zoning districts entitled C3 corridor commercial and C4 interstate commercial, and adopting zoning regulations applicable to these districts. There.
So, thank you, Mayor and Council. So putting on kind of the other hat from the development services side, when I first got here and even before that as outside counsel for the city, you had a tremendous number of meetings from developers related to your thoroughfare overlay district. It was, I think, a great idea, but it maybe didn't get the city quite where you wanted to be development wise. So what we have looked at here is repealing the thoroughfare overlay district, which originally applied to just the first 300 feet of I-45 frontage and some of your major thoroughfares. And it's being replaced with something that is a little more simple for the public, for prospective developers to use and understand. So it doesn't take pre-development meeting to understand what is and is not allowed in a commercial district. So the other major change here is that the businesses that go along I-45 and the development needs are a little different from the planning perspective than along our internal major thoroughfares, especially where we see a lot of local businesses that are redeveloping there. So the thoroughfare overlay district, for instance, had this 40-foot front setback, which was incredibly difficult for those small local businesses to try to comply with. And it was having this unintended effect of stifling development and redevelopment. So what we did here is try to strike a balance where we created the two new commercial districts, C3 and C4. Anything along I-45 would be C4 interstate commercial, and anything along the other major thoroughfares would be C3 corridor commercial. We did do away with the 40-foot setback, but traded that for some more strict residential protections. In the interstate commercial, you now allow for taller buildings, but the taller the building, the bigger the setback has to be, especially if it's next to any kind of residential district. So just to reiterate that, if you build in a C1 covered by the thoroughfare overlay district right now, you would not get as much protection if you're in a residential area as you will under the new regulation. So there's definitely some harsher things for certain developments in this. At the same time, it is a lot easier to apply, a little more clear what the regulations are. And we've had a lot of comment on this. It's all been verbal. We've encouraged people to either speak up at this meeting, provide any kind of feedback. Any feedback that was done early in the process has actually been incorporated into the ordinance already. And the only verbal comments we've had have actually been, we did not want to create any non-conforming uses, and we did not originally change any R1 single family lots that were fronting I-45. We didn't want to touch those because those people had their own expectations, and instead we've had more and more people asking to be included in the C4 zoning district because it does line up with their plans for development better than the C1 with the thoroughfare overlay district. And that was a very long explanation. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, I want to say, I think from everything I understood in reading through this, this is a really smart, savvy decision that definitely does seem like it is a direct response to the feedback I remember getting in the last few years from developers. And it is easier to understand than what we have on the books currently, for sure. Tested by the ability of, I was able to read it a lot easier than the last one. And I'm in favor of it. You know, I think for me, what I see as the biggest void is the opportunity to really cohesively create the landscaping requirements that we want in this city. And that I should be clear, the things that I've heard my constituents talk about, things that I've been passionate about from the beginning. And, you know, that includes not only street trees and sidewalks, but the kinds of landscaping we want, particularly from commercial. establishments. I'm happy with what I see in here, and this in here is more exhaustive than what we've had before, for sure. Like, this is a huge step up, so I want to say, like, yay. But I want more. And so what I want to ask is, so I have a couple of requests for tweaks right now, but mainly, can we spend some time? Is there going to be opportunity to create what I'm talking about, and a whole set of more cohesive landscaping guidelines and requirements?
I would say that not only is there an opportunity, independently of that, that's something that we were anticipating. So this was an attempt to just fix one major issue we had. We've kind of been going through the ordinance a little at a time. I'm sure you'll see more. It's been a little easier for the public and the Planning and Zoning Commission to tackle, one or two districts at a time instead of trying to just completely rewrite the entire zoning ordinance. Also, Lamarque is a unique city with unique challenges, and we do need to hear from the people, especially when it comes to the public hearings and these zoning changes. So we try to put them in a little at a time so we can get that verbal feedback, all the phone calls from people about what they like or don't like, and bring that to council before you see these changes. So that was a long explanation about the general plan for the zoning ordinance, but specifically for landscaping, we did not want to piecemeal landscaping too much. The C4, because it is I-45 frontage, and because we were giving those developers a little smaller setback requirements, we wanted to trade that for really some stepped up landscaping requirements. Yeah. You'll notice there's some sidewalks and internal walking trail requirements as well.
Absolutely.
Right, so we're really pushing that, but there is a plan to bring landscaping requirements that are more detailed for the city as a whole in a future update of the zoning ordinance, hopefully next year.
Okay, and that's, like I said, I'm so pleased to see this is a big step up in terms of landscaping for commercial districts. Particularly, I'm interested in seeing, like, I'm happy to see this, and what is in section H, a minimum of 1 shade tree. Some of the things I'm thinking about, and I want your advice on how is, so that we make sure we don't end up with a whole bunch of live oak trees planted right up against the sidewalk, and then we have an issue in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Where do we best address something like that? Is it a whole separate landscaping ordinance that's just, or whatever body of legislation for that? Or does it fit into here and we say, here is the list of native trees you're allowed to pick from as a developer?
So you could do it either way. I will tell you that my plan kind of moving forward was to just use a guideline list like you're talking about. Right. These are the trees that are authorized, since it does have to go through landscaping approval. We don't have a lot of detail right now, so it's kind of open. Yeah. But ideally we would get to an ordinance so that it's very clear, and council's got some hopefully consulting background on what's best for this area, what works for the type of developments we're looking at, that sort of thing.
Fantastic. Well, I'm like I said, again, I really like this. Those details are the things that I'm next concerned about, is what kind of native landscaping are we requiring that best suits our area, working from expert resources and even maybe consulting for our area to make long-term plans, so we don't end up with, I don't want to say, well, it's got to be these things and we got to make sure that within 5 years they've planted 70% of their coverage, but we haven't accounted for which staff is going to, monitor that, who's going to enforce that, and are the plants we're asking them to do. Like, I don't want to send everyone off for a free for all, and then they buy things that aren't appropriate. I will pause and let someone else ask questions. But that's great, and I would really like for us to move on that next piece. This first piece seems to me to be so integral, especially where we are in the momentum of our development. So it makes a lot of sense.
No questions from me, sir.
I'm zoning, a little history, was involved in it. We created the first. Marque did not come from zoning. It was
right.
Free for all in the city, right? So finally they tried many years ago to do an entity called, I recall that Vitex, so we're going to emit 50 tons of pollutants in the air over where the Mainland Prep Academy is now. That was being turned into and we organized and it ultimately resulted in knocking on door, petition, and we got, so, and I was on the first zoning commission at that time too. I'm gonna ask council if we could table this, both of them, this item and the second one, because I'm really going through this line by line. And and I want to engage more people as well too, because if you ask a resident of Lamarque, what's your zoning classification? I might as well be asking them, you know, what's the secrets of long life or something. They don't, no one knows what their zoning classification is. And now we're changing it in effect. And I want some time to, I would ask that some time to really permit me at least and others to look at both these items. Zoning is something that I just personally, it was a discussion topic that went on for a period of time, right? And I think that we need to re-engage our residents as to the benefits of zoning. I think that we need to re-engage residents in terms of the possibility of creating a greener city and to identify with our developers as well the possibilities of parks and supporting that effort. If Lamarque is going to grow with its economic side, I think that we also have a responsibility to provide spaces where our kids and our children can safely play, can utilize, can walk. I can go out and get serious about walking and feel that I'm not going to be run over by someone on an unlicensed dirt bike or someone speeding down the street. So there's a whole other issue. So that's all I ask, is that I'm still interested in, I'd be like we did on the committee, what is it, the commission stuff, tabling it, let's get an ability to study it, get further input, and come back with comments and stuff. I see Dara's kind of freaking out in a way, but
Yeah, the one thing that I feel at least compelled to pass on from the public comments is that, you know, typically that's a great way to handle zoning, is kind of go through it slowly. It has gone through P&Z, like I said, a couple of times with some pretty good public comments. We do have quite a few people who are kind of waiting with bated breath for when this is going to be final. So that just so that council knows, if you were to pass it tonight and decided you weren't comfortable with it, you don't have to pass it on second reading. If you don't pass it tonight, you definitely can't pass it on second reading at your June meeting. So I would say we've had at least 2 developers and 3 vacant landowners who were really wanting this to happen sooner rather than later. And actually on the next item, I've got a guy who couldn't quite get in on the map change and asked to have it modified. So now that I've passed that along, if council decides that you want to wait, I totally get it.
I appreciate the developers' concerns. We're not here, but ultimately, I think it's our residents that live with this. And I like I said, I'd like it's and in my view, it's not going to be excessive. I may in my discussion, it may appear that way, but I think this council can move quickly once we have solicited the feedback and had a time to carefully review everything on this side. Okay. On that side, and one other thing I'd like to hear from, and Mr. Giddy's back there, I want to hear from the economic development side too. What's their view with regard to these changes? I haven't seen that, and not that I'm asking for it right now, Mr. Giddy. I am good, but I'm going to come back with you, and I'm interested in hearing that feedback.
So here's part of the frustration. So I heard you say earlier
that the overlay district had issues. Did you not say that?
I did say it was confusing to apply, yes.
To 2 or 3 or several?
Issues?
It was confusing to who? 2 or 3 developers, several developers?
Okay, so it was confusing to, I would say at least 10. As outside counsel, that was the thing you called me in the most frequently, was to have very contentious pre-development meetings regarding this ordinance. The BOA used to issue quite a lot of variances. Now the BOA does not issue variances very often, which is, in my opinion, a good thing, because I think that the BOA currently understands what the standard is for a variance. So they're doing a better job of giving those out when they are meeting the standard and not when a developer doesn't meet the standard. It's very hard for a new development to meet an unnecessary hardship standard.
So 10,
At least
10, okay. Since you've been here.
since I've been working with the city, at least 10. And we have had that question as well from staff members, residents, just trying to.
I believe you. I
Yeah.
totally believe you. 100%. 10, at least 10. Did anybody ever stop to think that perhaps they should bring this to council and say to council, you passed this, but it's not working. So we need to let you know that it's not working. And so we need direction. Do you want us to go back and try to find a way to make it work, or do you want us to try to find a better solution?
So I apologize, Mayor, if it looks as if that was done without council approval. That was one of the things we talked about at the very beginning. And then my understanding, which may no longer be correct under this new makeup of council, is that Planning and Zoning Commission is delegated with the responsibility for that. We did in fact talk to Planning and Zoning Commission for probably about the last 6 months, letting them know that this was anticipated, trying to get feedback, make sure that they were comfortable with going in that direction. And that's why the draft regs did go before them a couple of times to try to make sure that they were comfortable with them first, as the council's delegated commission on planning and zoning.
Okay, so let me go a different route. So according to the documentation, the thoroughfare overlay zoning district, it sounds like it's some sort of an ordinance. Is that what it is?
It is an ordinance.
It is
It's
okay.
part of your zoning ordinance, yes.
Right, right. I'm building here. Which means council had to adopt it.
Correct.
So if council adopted it, then council thought at that time it would be the most effective tool. So then if in turn it was discovered that it's not the most effective tool, why wouldn't we bring that back to council and seek direction? Why wouldn't there have been a report to say to council, there are X amount of opportunities that have been lost because of the confusing interpretations of this thoroughfare overlay zoning ordinance or whatever we were gonna discuss. Here's the point. The people feel as though they have no knowledge of what's happening in their government, and then they address council. And then we don't know what's happening in their government either. And then we get into a meeting on Monday night and we say, well, if we don't pass it, then we're going to run into some potential issues because we have all these other opportunities that are here. And again, I want this to be clear tonight. I'm not angry at anyone personally. I'm simply reflecting the frustration of the people. This has to change the way that we do business. I'm not, maybe it was fine before and I was part of those councils, but again, I've heard an earful about how we do business. And I've heard an earful from our constituency about how we conduct ourselves here on council and how we allow things to happen as though we don't have any power to alter the course of how things happen. So I am concerned that we're continuing to do things in a way that's not as transparent to our constituency as we could. Nobody's to blame. I just want us to move in a different direction. And so I concur with Mayor Pro Tem. I think that we need to slow down and we need to learn the lessons that the council is most certainly in control of this government. And the citizens elect the council. And this is their government and they want it to be done differently. And if I have to point this out on every agenda item until we get it, then that's what I'll do. Now, certainly you want to respond, dear.
So Mayor, just to be clear, I don't personally have any problem if council chooses to table it. That is certainly, at your pleasure. I do feel, because there was a lot of public comment on this, I just wanted to pass along the public comments because they were verbal and not written.
I appreciate that, dear. I do.
And if I could point out one other minor thing. So I know it seems like we don't get to talk to the public very often. Working in development services, that was something I asked to do because I wanted to be a lot closer to the public than I usually get to as city attorney. I have talked to hundreds of people in the time that I've been here. It's one of the rewarding parts of the job. It can be one of the toughest parts too, because I often get the really problem phone calls where I have to tell someone not just no, but why. The answer is no, and hopefully there's an educational aspect to that as well. One thing that I do think this ordinance does is I've heard from residents as well who are unhappy about developments that went in next to their house. And because of whether it was that the zoning ordinance wasn't clear, that there had been a previous interpretation by the Board of Adjustment on how something applied, or whether it was because there just wasn't enough landscaping requirement or residential protection or limited uses in those districts, there was nothing that could be done about it under that current zoning ordinance. So I appreciate what you're saying. And we'll try to take that into account using a completely different process. I will say it's completely different than what's been done in the past. Knowing that, we'll come at this a different way. But do please know that there's a lot of public input goes into these. We can certainly have more. But an ordinance like this, I bring it to you in the draft form with planning principles, with the homework done, to try to provide something as a baseline for a good discussion, not as an attempt to usurp the council's wishes or to run it past the public without them looking at it. In fact, Mr. Compion could probably speak to this. There's a lot of public hearing requirement that's in addition to anything else. And I will say we've been getting very good participation with the Zoom meetings on Planning and Zoning Commission. So hopefully the commissioners could speak to that as well. Thank you, Mayor, for that.
And let me say this, Joe, and dear, let me say this. I know you work really hard and I appreciate you. I don't want you to think that this is just a shift, right? Council's kind of, some of us has recently gotten elected and we've been hearing this, right?
Yes, sir.
In the last 4 months. And so this is just a political shift. It's not against anybody. I know you're hardworking and you're very well-meaning and I'm proud of the work that you've done. We just simply have to shift it a little bit to reflect the will of the people. That's it. Go ahead, Jeff.
And I say this to all, Tink knows this because he was very generous when we met one time and said, you go and talk to Dira, and I told you I talked to you, right? That's just my habit. I'm not going to go out and, well, Charlene and I, we like to eat a lot together, talk about good places to eat, but other than that, the substantive stuff, I want to take up with you, Tink. However, having said that, it's interesting what I'm looking for, and is I want to know about these discussions and feedback that you've had from other citizens, right? Because what's interesting in this little small community is after some developer meets with you or with anybody here, it's interesting. I get a call from that developer and they're complaining about this or that, and I have no idea what they're talking about. I really don't. And I'm listening and I say nothing. But I do say one thing: if I'm able to facilitate a meeting with the city manager and to follow up and get I will do that, right? But I want to be able, and in my book, and I said this to my employees many times, I will defend you 110% as long as I know what's going on, right? I don't, and that's all I ask, and that's all that I'm seeking, you know, to provide for our residents, at least those in my district here. And God knows I've met people that I didn't even know that were so interested in these matters, right? And that don't necessarily provide them the feedback. And I also want to take on developers who are trying to build wedges between us. That's the other thing. I want us to have a united front as we go out and we build a bigger, stronger community of Lamarque and turn this sleepy little town into the real hub of this county. Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No, sir.
All right, Dara. Thank you. We're at item 5E. Mr. Jackson.
Discussion related to adopting ordinance O-2021-0009, amending the city zoning map, master plan, and comprehensive plan by adopting an amended and updated official zoning map of the city of Lamarque to serve as the master plan pursuant to the city charter and the official zoning map pursuant to city code chapter 71 zoning. Derek.
So we talked about this a little bit. It includes the C3 and C4 changes. Since you tabled the last item, we would anticipate that to happen here as well. But just for the record, we've also received a request to add 3 parcels to this. So when we bring it back, hopefully we can add those as well. They're currently zoned C1, and they're kind of the last little pieces that weren't incorporated in this change. Some additional changes that are on this, because if we were going to update your zoning map, which I will say desperately needs to be done, we wanted to try to incorporate all the corrections as well. So we were able to include all of the ordinances that were passed for at least the last decade. You'll notice that the planned development districts have been corrected, and those are showing up on the map in purple. You also have a zoning district on the current official map, which is the public zoning district. That district does not actually exist in your textual chapter 21. And so right now, if a person in the public zoning district wants to develop something, they have to come for a zone change. It takes about 90 days. It costs $500 to go through all the notice procedures that are required, so it can be pretty difficult. Typically, a public zoning district might apply to actual city parks and city facilities. It wouldn't be too unusual, but in this case, it definitely applies to other, some residential, some commercial buildings, et cetera. So this is an attempt to go ahead and incorporate all of those corrections as well.
I have just a quick question. Dear, if you know, or anyone know, do we have I know we didn't incorporate this in our original zoning, but as part of this effort, do we have any language that deals with historical buildings that have some sort of historical designation, exemptions related to their, just some of those lines? And then the other issue with regard to zoning, and this I've seen actually in several communities like Galveston, I've worked on this. There was another community in Orange that was, and I believe it was in the zoning ordinances, as I recall, issues related to the changes that occur when a property has been impacted by a disaster. So we had originally then a residential property, or that sort of those are the things that I'm also looking at, by the way.
So if I can respond to that, the non-conforming use provision in some zoning ordinances will be very strict. And if you're impacted by a disaster to a point that sometimes they'll say 50% of the value, something to that effect, you'd have to come up to current standards for the setbacks. There's something similar, though it's a more complicated version to apply, but something similar in building code. We do not have that, not in a manner that is ever interpreted that way here in Lamarque. I tend to, at least to the extent that as development services director, I'm doing any kind of interpretation of the zoning ordinance, which that gets appealed to BOA if someone chooses to. we tend to be fairly lenient with existing buildings. That seems to have been council's will, is to help your residents as much as possible, help your local businesses and assist them in rebuilding, working through anything to that effect. So you don't have language like that, and it's never been, what you do have has never been interpreted strictly, at least while I've been here. The historic buildings, we don't have anything specific to historic buildings that gives them an exemption. But honestly, you have a pretty lenient zoning ordinance anyway, with the exception of the thoroughfare overlay district, which may or may not have been doing whatever the original intent was. You certainly could do that. To the extent we're talking about future projects, it's anticipated that the C2 zoning district would be redone to line up with the revitalization plan. It would likely include some information about historic buildings, where they're exempt from certain requirements, because that is kind of your downtown area. And right now there's a mismatch between the zoning regulations in the C2 zoning district that apply to that and what's actually there and what's anticipated to be there.
I'm also going to have an interest in looking at how churches are treated. And that's something that also, their designation, and some cities have attempted to regulate the activities that a church may have. For example, they may say, you're this designation, which means that you no longer can have food distribution events, things of that nature. Okay, so that's something that is of consideration for me, right?
If I may.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
So I think you're right. I mean, Councilman Pompey did request that this be tabled. And I think one thing that might be helpful moving forward would be, I don't know how cumbersome this list might be, but I know it's long, but more a list of the corrections, because I know, or at least a summary of what some of them are, some sort of representation of, I know from being on council a term that there's a number of just total inaccurate areas, right? Because of zoning, like you said, there's things that are listed one way and it's not applicable anymore, or something of that nature. If we could have something that we could look at, so that we're not just looking at this big block of the map and trying to figure out what's getting fixed, maybe like the highlights of what will be improved with this zoning, in your description. Because honestly, what I'm hearing a lot from my fellow council people are, and what you were just saying in the previous item, Dara, I promise I won't debate the previous item too much. I know it's not appropriate. But, is that there is so much interaction that you said you made that very clear when you were hired, that you wanted to be a public facing civil servant. You wanted to make yourself available. And, we were having a person in this position with your experience with our city and your legal experience and your past development experience, and you wanted to be a conduit for people. And what I've seen, what I've heard anecdotally, and what you relay when you're describing things, you clearly have been speaking to a lot of people. But we're also still hearing a lot of, no one's reaching out, we don't get heard. And we know that there's going to be a certain amount of that always, right? And I mean, it's the same, we experienced the same thing when Tink was first hired, and you had all of these public facing town halls and lots of things that are new, that are our city's very tangible, very effective effort to be more public facing and to throw away some of the curtains that some people feel are there. I want us to think so much not in terms of it's happening, it's not happening, because it's happening. It's clearly happening. And by it, I mean us reaching out to the public, trying to engage and doing a very effective job at that in a lot of ways. However, we still have hurdles of people who feel that they don't have that access for some reason, or that they are not being reached out to for some reason, or that they simply are not aware of how to access it. And I think that one tiny thing, and I don't know if this would be effective or not, but it is my suggestion, as part of your preps, like when you give us these notes, for example, like with the zoning map, or even the previous item, again, very briefly, some type of almost like qualitative type data that you could provide that is like sort of a summary of, I, as the development director or the development office, has spoken to at least this many households, this spent, you know, this is an issue that's been going on. And you give us a lot of those clues in these, but sometimes you can't really, you have to sort of read between the lines with some of this stuff. And if it was more explicit, perhaps that would be helpful going forward for us when we're at home reading and preparing, saying like, okay, so like this prep work has been going on. I can see that explicitly from her perspective or from this person's perspective. They're saying this is what they've done. Just a little bit more of that personal reflection. I don't know if that's appropriate for agenda notes, but I just, that is what I'm hearing. That's really sticking out to me, is that like there is, I mean, our staff, you guys are doing amazing work, and there's so much more transparency than what I understand has been for decades. But how do we keep it moving? And for me, as a council person, one thing that will help me very explicitly with this map would be a lot of what you just said, you know, like, here's the basic things we're changing with this. Let me give you my pitch for why this is a good idea, so you don't have to interpret it yourself. Because I go to the website and look at the map and I'm like, okay, I have a lot of questions to ask.
Yeah.
You know, so and you have the answers. I know you do. And now I'll stop.
You know, Casey, let me help with that, because I see where you're going with it, and let me articulate, I think, where the real frustration is underneath all of this. It is not only that some people believe that they're not being communicated with, right? And that can vary, right? Some people aren't necessarily as attentive and aware as others, and so you get all different things. But the bigger thing underneath it is that they are being dictated to. That's even bigger. So not only is it that some folks feel like they aren't really in the know, or maybe they're not being communicated with, but there underneath that there is this idea that it's going to be this way, and we don't really care what you think about it, right? Not saying that that's true, saying that's what they think, right? And so not only can we do a better job, tremendous job being done so far in comparison to where we've been, but also we need to do a better job at giving the people the power to decide their own fate. And that's the biggest missing link in their perception. It's almost like, you know, and we're not going to get off agenda, but, you know, there are decisions being made, perhaps even in the zoning ordinance, that the people don't have a chance to decide, right? They're being dictated to, and they don't take too kindly to that. So there's a two-part challenge for us, not only to make sure that they hear, but also to make sure that they are heard, right? And so that's the other part. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have two questions, sir.
Go ahead.
Deary, you said 90 days. You referred to a 90-day period.
90 days is the general answer for how long it takes to get through an individual zone change.
Okay. Is there a way to streamline that at all? Or is that just standard? Or is that the streamest line we can get?
So potentially we could go quicker if everything was complete when it was submitted and ready to go, and all the meetings were lined up in advance, because it does take statutory notice of the public hearings. So first off, zone changes, anytime you change a property, you have to notify all the property owners within 200 feet with a letter.
Correct.
And then there's also publication that has to go in, if memory serves, 15 days in advance of the meetings. Typically on anything, for instance, this is a large scale zoning change. So first we came to council and asked for approval for an alternative method of notice, so everything could go up on the website. And then we went through some extra public hearings in front of Planning and Zoning Commission. That's unusual, but you would still usually go through, at least you have to go through the Planning and Zoning Commission once. and then you have to go through council twice. So in the rare instance where council had 2 meetings scheduled close together, and we had sufficient time in advance of those meeting dates to put in a public notice in the newspaper that 15 days in advance, we could do it quicker. But it is very tricky to pull that off. And most of the time, zone change requests do not come in complete. As Development Services Director, I try to treat all of the applications. We tell them, look, just get the application in, start the ball rolling, and then we'll talk you through the other parts, so that we're only asking for what's substantively necessary instead of everything that is technically necessary.
And the second question was, you were mentioning about the, kind of like the building code, you upgrade, like in case of disaster, you upgrade 50% of your building, you have to conform to the new standard. Why can't we do it to this?
Can you require that in the zoning ordinance? You certainly can. That has not in the past been the direction that council or planning and zoning commission had dictated. Instead, it's a very lenient non-conforming use provision. But yeah, it's certainly something that you could choose to do.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Any other questions? All right, Dira, you done made it through 2 of them. Item 5F, Mr. Jackson.
Item 5S is discussion relating to discussion of possible action regarding designating a presiding municipal judge as recommended by the city manager, subject to execution of contract. Blah, 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 for the rest of that item. In your packet, you have a proposed contract for a municipal court judge, which is something we needed to get to you guys we talked about this a while back. There's also a municipal judge scoring sheet. We only had 3 people respond to the RFQ for the municipal court judge. I talked to the 3 applicants and interviewed them and scored them and presented that information to you. I know at one time council had asked for me to narrow it down to 3 and bring them to you. There was only 3 that applied. So I went ahead and interviewed the 3 and there's a score sheet for them so you can see who I would recommend based on the score sheet, but you guys can do whatever you choose to do with this. You can either accept that recommendation, move forward. You can talk to them. You can do whatever you want to do.
I would like to talk to them. I mean, they're representing the city, so I like to I'd like to talk to them, see where they're coming from, see how they feel about how they interact with court and see how they operate. So I would like to talk to them. That's just my opinion.
Sure. Thank you for that. Casey, what are you thinking?
I respect that, especially as a new council member. I think that, I think that's a really, I'm prepared. I like having the score criteria. I did my own amateur Googling, researching, and, I was pleased with the candidate that scored the highest. I'm prepared to move forward with that if there's some type of urgency. And that's kind of the biggest question I had is where are we in terms of the need for this appointment?
So we have an alternate judge that was approved by the council who has been operating as the judge in the interim. We had talked about what council said was I could select an interim or we can move forward with the process. We just decided to continue with the alternate until we were ready.
Well, then I support, maybe having an executive session where we get, like we've done with other positions. That would be fun with me. Yeah.
Cool. Joe?
I'm number one, I support the interview process. That's number one. I do have a question. The number of replies to the solicitation, the announcement, how long was the period of time was it posted?
It was open 2 weeks.
Couple of weeks.
I think it was just a short period of time. That surprised me. And I'm kind of more used to any postings about a 30-day period so that it gets out. Different bar groups can discuss it. You get council members saying, so that time period was something that surprised me because I did get some feedback from some people later. That's number one. Number two, your person that you recommended as a finalist, I guess this gets back to all this transparency, is from a law firm that whose former managing partner is my old college law school a roommate, housemate. So I just throw that out, and that I'm familiar with the law firm, and it's Texas's oldest law firm, in fact. I'm familiar with that. That's number one. I just say that. And Tink, this is, I've been asking you about it, right? What's the qualifications and stuff. I have some, this is just me. A municipal judge is kind of like a JP, the equivalent of a justice of the peace. In some jurisdictions, especially home rule cities like Lamarck, they don't have to be lawyers. It's at the option of the council to say, we can appoint a non-lawyer to this position. And they were permitted to take classes and things of that nature. I have a strong feeling about that. Actually, my cousin served in that little community outside Pearland. He was the local municipal judge. Didn't have any legal background at all. And so I personally would, I don't want to delay the process. That's number one, right? I would like to take time to interview. But if at the end of all of this, we're still not to some agreement, I would like to then, and recognizing what you just said, Tink, we're not under any, I'd like us to revisit the qualifications, see how we can best get a municipal judge. Because I can tell you this, personally, when I was here as a youth advocate, I was threatened with jailing by a court clerk who said I was not permitted to engage in helping the young man that I was here with, who was part of it. So believe me, I was ticked off. And so I want a court here that is part of the soul of our community. That's all I'm looking for.
And just one clarification, just so you'll know, we had put out information about the potential of bringing in an interim prior to the time that we actually posted it. That was out there for quite a while. We had 8 or 10 or 12 that responded to that. So, I mean, it wasn't like the 2 weeks was just, they knew it was coming. And so.
But they didn't bother to follow up.
A lot of the ones that said they wanted to be interim didn't end up.
Oh, that was the interim one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
I see. So the advertising for the interim section was then followed by the posting for the actual position, and people who had been notified of that from the beginning.
People that had
then just
submitted
dropped off.
interest for the interim did not apply for the full.
Okay, well that's different.
Yeah.
So is it your feeling, so that we can gain some clarity, is it your feeling that we should allow for more potential candidates to submit their applications or their resumes, Mr. Campion? Is that what you were asking council to consider?
I would like us to have a judge in place, a permanent one, that's number one. But I don't see any difficult personally to go ahead and arrange an interview in, I think you mentioned executive session, with the 3 people. And then let's determine at that point, gather our forces, let's get our perspective and see if none of them meet what we're looking for, then let's continue. We're not in any rush on that.
Yeah, and one other thing you might consider there too is you also, as soon as we finish this up, you need to look at the alternate too, because you can appoint alternates as well.
Okay.
And so that might be an area where somebody, if you have, if there's somebody in the general population that wants to get involved and learn, they could come in as an alternate and get the training.
That would be, that's a possibility there.
So with that, Mr. Jackson, are you suggesting in addition to Mr. Getty or in lieu of Mr. Getty?
Either way, that would be up to you guys, because you need to reappoint, you need to look at either way, or both.
Okay. So it sounds like what you're saying, Joe, is, it sounds like what the council is saying is that we're visit with the 3, then we'll discuss amongst ourselves if we found the person that we are interested in. If not, then we would perhaps move forward with reopening the position. Does that sound like?
Look at the qualifications and things.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this
Yes, sir.
Okay, guys, I believe that we've made it through.
Can I add one more thing to that?
Go ahead.
One other thing I'd like for you guys to do as well is to, I mean, you have a draft contract, so start looking at that contract as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
That
I
process
just
too.
looking at that.
Thank you, Tim.
How many, by the way, just a quick thing, how many, what's our staffing requirements for our municipal court? How many people are involved? Is it just the clerk?
We have
The judge?
we have the administrator, 2 clerks, youth advocate, and the marshal.
We have a youth advocate now, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
We did that about a
Couple years
year
ago?
ago.
Was it
Oh,
just a
my
year ago? I
goodness.
thought it was-
It's been about a year ago.
Wow.
No, it was actually before. We did that before COVID.
Yeah, I was
You've been
gonna
here
say we
longer
did it
than
before
that,
COVID, yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I think our residents would be great to hear that too.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have finished our workshop. Are we ready for our regular meeting? Okay, let's do this. City of Lamarck City Council regular meeting of May 17th, 2021. Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Lamarck, Texas will conduct their meeting via teleconference Zoom on Monday, May 17th, 2021, beginning immediately following the workshop that begins at 6 p.m. for the purpose of considering the following agenda. This meeting has been called to order. We won't ask Robin to do another roll call since we're all here physically. Show that all council members who have been duly elected and sworn are present. And now we move to item 3. Are there any, Kyle, any requests for participation in item 3?
There's only about 2 new people that have joined the meeting that weren't here in the beginning.
Well, let me read this again. Limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments from the public at this time. Any person with city-related business who has signed up may speak to council on a specific agenda item. This item is limited to 3 minutes. In compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the city may not deliberate on comments. Personal attacks will not be allowed, and personnel matters should be addressed to the city manager during normal business hours. Is there any person wishing to speak at this time? Any persons via Zoom wishing to speak or wishing to address the council at this time? Hearing none, we'll move to item 4, minutes. Item 4A, workshop of minutes of the April 12th, 2021 meeting. Item B, regular meeting minutes of the April 12th, 2021 meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
The second.
Second.
Are there any corrections or any additions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5A, public hearing. Conduct public hearing to hear public input regarding adopting ordinance number letter O -2021-0004, amending city code section 2.9, establishing a policy for appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. Robin, we will close the regularly scheduled meeting at what time, ma'am? 8:43, and we'll open our public hearing on item 5A. Is there anyone via Zoom wishing to speak to 5A? Anyone wishing to speak to item 5A? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing at 8:44. And at 8:44, we will open the public hearing for item 5B. Conduct public hearing to hear public input regarding adopting ordinance letter O-2021-0006, changing the zoning district from R1 single family residential to R2 two-family residential lots 13 and 14, the Winslow addition, abstract 150, located near the end of Briar Lane, Lamarck, Texas. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item 5B in the public hearing? Anyone wishing to speak to item 5B in this public hearing? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing for 5B and we'll open the public hearing for 5C at the same time. conduct a public hearing to hear public input regarding adopting ordinance number letter O-2021-0007, amending the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget for various funds expenditures by decreasing various fund balances and increasing certain expenditures to individual budget accounts in various funds and increasing certain revenues in various funds as set forth in Exhibit A. Is there anyone via Zoom wishing to speak to item 5C in the public hearing? Anyone wishing to speak to item 5C in the public hearing? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing at 8:45, we'll open the regularly scheduled meeting and we'll move on to item 6, old business. Item 6A, discussion possible action regarding adopting ordinance number letter O-2021-0004, amending city code section .9, establishing a policy for appointments to boards and commissions and committees. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Casey. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just gonna
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
repeat my vote from last time.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Let the record reflect that Councilwoman McAuliffe has voted in the negative. And the item carries 3-1. Item 6B, discussion possible action regarding adopting ordinance number letter O-2021-0006, changing the zoning district from R1 single family residential to R2 two-family residential lots 13 and 14, Winslow Edition, abstract 150, located near the end of Briar Lane, Lamarck, Texas. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion?
I have a quick item.
Mr. Conley?
I know when these requests for change of zoning come in, there's a process where neighbors are alerted. And on either of these items, did you get feedback? Did people reply? Was there objection?
On item B?
Well, on B, yeah, on B, for
Right,
example.
because that's the only zone change that's.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, the B.
Right, yes, we got, I'm trying to remember, it's been a while, but I don't think we had anyone who was opposed. We had a couple of people who got the notices who called and asked questions.
Oh, okay.
And once we asked questions, we just encouraged them to put in a written comment, or did they want us to pass on any comment? And they said, no, now that we understand, we're fine.
Okay, like I said, we were discussing earlier, that follow-up, right? We're letting people know that there's a process here, and please take advantage of it, you know, on that side.
And for council's knowledge, in case you want this in a different form, we try to always put whatever comments we've gotten. If we get them in time, we'll even put the verbal comments into your board and commission, your planning and zoning commission report that goes into your packet.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
No problem at all. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 6C, discussion possible action regarding adopting ordinance number letters O-2021-0007, amending the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget for various funds expenditures by decreasing various fund balances and increasing certain expenditures to individual budget accounts in various funds and increasing certain revenues in various funds as set forth in Exhibit A. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there any discussion? That just sounds so shady. It's very technical and legal, but it just sounds weird. That's why I'm laughing. Any discussion?
No.
We'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I promise you it's not shady. It just sounds very, very confusing. Item 7, new business. 7A, discussion possible action regarding award of an authorization for a city manager to execute a contract with Crescent Electric to complete LMEDC project for streetscape improvements at Laurel and First Street, Economic Development Corporation. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item 7B, discussion, possible action regarding consents for Public Improvement District 1, Painted Meadows, Section 3, 4, and 5, Economic Development. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 7C, discussion, possible action regarding adopting ordinance number letter O-2021-0008, amending chapter 71 zoning of the City Code of Ordinances by repealing the thoroughfare overlay zoning district and adopting 2 new commercial zoning districts entitled C3 Corridor Commercial and C4 Interstate Commercial, and adopting zoning regulations to these applicable districts. Sounds like we're gonna entertain a motion to table. So before we do that, let me ask Dira this question. At some point in our discussion, you said that there is, it's better for us to do this in a more expeditious manner. What sort of time frame would we need to work with?
So that's not an easy question for me to answer. Just to clarify, my earlier statement was that I had several people asking for when this could be completed because they were wanting to submit plats and consolidate lots. And so our anticipated date for this to be finalized was your June 21st meeting. If you're tabling it here, it's just up to council. If another opportunity arises and you want to put it on the council agenda, we can certainly do that. Yeah, it's just up to you.
So let me ask you this then, so we can get this out the way. So this is an ordinance. We could have the first reading of this ordinance. We can workshop, have the first reading, and then what time frame? What would be the shortest time frame between the first reading, the public hearing, and the second reading of the ordinance that we would be able to?
I mean, honestly, you're gonna need at least 15 days, probably a little longer than that. Because
Between first and second?
Right, because since this is a zoning ordinance, it takes the extra public hearing notice period. So you're gonna need probably about 3 weeks in reality to be able to get the publication notice put back in the newspaper. Because you're looking at 15 days, a day to notify the newspaper. You've got another day where it actually runs. And then they usually require an additional couple of days before the notice can be placed, correct, Robin?
Depends on if it's down on Friday or not. It's usually on Monday when they can't.
Yeah, so somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks would be about the shortest you could pull this off.
Okay, so, and you had us on and I'm just saying this just to get some information, get clarity. So you had us on a course that we would have the second reading on what day?
June 21st.
Okay. And we don't necessarily have to meet that deadline. I hear you say. So, but if we were to try to, do we have enough time to really get a good workshop in with this, and perhaps a first reading, a public hearing, and a second reading to get close to where you were?
We could do a workshop next week, and then you could go workshop and right into a meeting, the scheduled meeting at the end of the workshop.
And then I could get you my comments before and share it with council.
And I would request, I know we have a special meeting already next week, and I'm out of town for most of next week. Just personally.
No, I'd like you to be here.
Yeah, personally, I would.
So maybe that Monday after.
Yeah, maybe just pushing it just a little bit would be.
Yeah. 31st. That's Memorial Day, isn't it?
It is.
So June the 1st. Yeah. Yeah, I think I would be willing, Casey. I don't want you to miss any of our discussions if we don't have to.
Yeah.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Carlson has stepped out of the meeting. Would that be we're gonna try to do this as expeditiously, not because you've asked, but because we see the urgency, right? But we do want to have a chance for the community to see this via the website, and also so for us to take public comments from our constituents. But we definitely want to get this through because it's obviously important to the future of our city. So is that workable, Dira and Mr. Jackson?
June the 1st, and we'll have time by the 20, you should have time by the 21st to get it.
Right, yeah, we can do that if we know in advance. What will help it be expeditious is if council has comments that they can send direct to me or to Mr. Jackson. Obviously, we're gonna incorporate those into the packet as well, so that it's very transparent to the public what comments were made. But if council's willing to do that, that might help us speed up the process just a little bit.
So yeah, if we have the workshop on the 1st and we've got comments prior, if we have to make minor changes, that's not that big a deal.
Yeah, I
So
can do that on-
substantive changes would be what would throw it off schedule.
Okay. Well, we're gonna take heed to those folks that are waiting to do business with our city. We want to be good partners. So I'm willing to do the extra work. It sounds like Ms. McAuliffe is and Mr. Compion is as well. I thought I heard Mr. Carlson say. So if we can schedule it according to what we just said, I think that we have a plan.
Certainly, Mayor, and one other option just to point out, with any zoning ordinance, it takes longer to change it, but it can certainly be changed. So if at any point, let's say theoretically, council adopts this, the new set of regulations and the zoning map, and you say, we're gonna try this out for 6 months. If at the end of the 6 months, you decided that you didn't think this new method was working out, you'd like to go back to the thoroughfare overlay district, you can certainly do that.
Sure.
Well, that begs a question that I had, that I didn't ask. Is there, does council annually review our zoning ordinance? Has that been done?
Not to my knowledge.
No,
I have not been
I've just
part
kind
of an
of
annual
asked us to, might consider that in the future, because it gives you time and our staff
Right.
to identify.
And that's a big task.
Yeah,
The zoning ordinance is big.
Yeah, that's why we're only.
Then it would get us better prepared, you understand, all of us, as we're hearing comments. That's just a thought.
So,
Sure.
so
Sort of annual.
I did see that the Planning and Zoning Commission is anticipated to give an annual report to council. I don't know that they've ever done that. Now that I'm here and I'm the liaison with Planning and Zoning Commission, the plan was to go ahead and provide an annual report to council of what they've done and kind of what they're planning to do. Make sure that the board is in agreement with that and then can pass it on.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate you working with us on this. This is gonna be great. I really do. Sounds like we've given Mr. Jackson and Ms. Parnell direction. So I think we were seeking a table. So let's get that table.
You can do both of them in one motion, Mayor.
Oh, okay. Let's do both in one motion. Excited. Let's do that. Where are we? We forgot. Oh, no, we didn't.
7 C and D.
C and D. Let me read D for us. Discussion possible action regarding adopting of ordinance number letter O -2021-0009, amending the city's zoning map, master plan and comprehensive plan by adopting an amended and updated official zoning map of the city of Lamarque to serve as the master plan pursuant to city charter and official zoning map pursuant to city code chapter 71 zoning. I will entertain a motion to table items C and D until June the 1st.
Yeah, so moved.
Second. There's no discussion after a table. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, administration, for working with us on this zoning issue. Item 7E, possible action, discussion possible action regarding adopting ordinance number letter O -2021-0010, establishing the method of calculation of the increment for TERS 2 as the taxable value approach pursuant to section 311.012 of the Texas Tax Code. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
There's a second?
Second.
Been a motion and a second. For clarification purposes, this TERS affects Omega Bay, and it is to assist them with street maintenance because of the issue with their private streets. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 7F, discussion possible action regarding canceling the regular city council meeting scheduled for June 14th, 2021, and schedule a special meeting for June 21st, 2021. The idea, I believe, behind this is that myself, Mr. Jackson, and I believe Ms. Warren at least, will be attending a hurricane conference in New Orleans, Louisiana. And so we are seeking to allow for us to attend and return so that we can conduct business as a fully strengthened staff and council. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
The second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 7G, discussion possible action regarding designating the presiding municipal judge as recommended by the city manager, subject to the execution of a contract for professional judicial services, presiding judge, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute a contract with a person designated by the council as presiding multiple judge. I believe that we will seek a table on this one because the council has elected to visit with these three persons personally to get a feel for their fit with this city. And so I'll entertain a motion to table.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
I'll
Let's
let
see.
him have the so move. I'll take the second.
Mr. Compion made the motion, Mrs. McAuliffe seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 8A, appointments, discussion possible action regarding appointments and or reappointments to fill various positions of boards and commissions. Does anyone have any appointments to make tonight?
I do. I would like to appoint Ms. Shelia Brown to the Board of Adjustment as alternate. And then I have a request. I have had quite the time making direct contact with Mr. Larry Walker, who has been a very long-serving member of the Parks Board, and I have an appointment to the Parks Board. His seat came up in 2020. Obviously, 2020 was just like a bag of cats, and so everyone had a lot of forgiveness, but the last few months I've really struggled in getting in contact with him, haven't heard from him, and I'm asking him to please reach out to me so that we can talk about his position and whether he wants to continue serving. And I guess now, because we passed the new, would it apply? Would he need to fill out an application as of
Under
tonight?
the new,
Yeah.
yes.
So, Mr. Walker, please fill out an application and,
Didn't come back under our procedures.
okay,
It would come to us for a one-year term.
all right. Well, then that will maybe give me a better contact for him as well. But I'm eager to speak to someone who's so graciously and ardently served the city for a long time.
Absolutely.
So that's what I have. And yay for Miss Brown. Yay for BOA. It happened, Dara. It's full, or it's getting full.
And just in the interest, Mayor, if I can, in the interest of transparency, you'll notice with your ordinance, I don't think it made it onto the agenda caption, but with your ordinance is the draft that Ms. Eldridge prepared and I reviewed of the new application for boards and commission members. So you did want to approve that. You weren't clear whether you wanted it to be a formal approval or a soft approval, but either way, it is in your packet and publicly available. So if there's any comments.
It was in here?
It is, it's right behind your.
Oh, I
your
see it
boards
now.
and
Yeah, I'm
commissions.
sorry. Great, yeah, thank you.
Good deal. And so we have one nomination from Ms. McAuliffe. Are there any other nominations?
No, sir.
Ms. Campion?
I'll be bringing some at the next meeting
Okay,
now that
sure.
we've already.
No problem at all. No problem at all. So we'll vote on Ms. McAuliffe's appointment. Before we vote, let me say that I want to commend you, Ms. McAuliffe. That is very, very gracious of you that you would publicly reach out to Coach Walker in this way. And I really thank you for that. Because I think that it shows that you're willing to work with those folks that are serving on these committees. And I want to say that I'm excited about that. And I know your heart, and I'm with you. Great thing that you're doing here. So Coach Walker, please, sir, if you might reach out to Councilwoman McAuliffe, myself, Mr. Jackson, Ms. Eldridge, our city clerk, so that we can get you all in contact, so that we can let you guys have a meeting to see what the next steps would be for the Parks Board.
I will call the chairman of that board tomorrow and get a phone number for you.
That's great. Thank you. And I do want to say that I have been given multiple phone numbers from staff, from his fellow contacts, that it's been attempted. And I think we're just missing each other. And, you know, like I said, bag of cats, like lots of crazy stuff going on for a lot of people in the last several months. So lots of lenience there, but.
Ships passing in the night, huh?
Mhm.
All right, let's vote on Councilwoman McAuliffe's nomination of Ms. Brown. And so all those in favor of that nomination and that appointment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item 9, request and announcements from council. Certainly, let's start tonight with Mr. Carlson. Being the least of us in seniority, he gets to go first.
Thank you, sir. In speaking with my predecessor, and I totally concur with where he would like to put his money for the position. I support his decision, and if I could, city manager, if you could contact the police chief and get me a list of 3 to 5 items and their cost, I would like that money to go towards that. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
So I'll take care of that.
That's all I have, sir.
So, yeah.
So you're gonna have to fill me in on this money. I don't know what that's referencing, so someone help me out there.
So
Can you help clarify?
yeah, I think this was former council member Mitch Titch had spoken about a budget carryover, I believe, from maybe a previous
Well,
year.
it was the budget for this year.
Okay, so the budget item for this year, so the money's already been appropriated for.
Each council person is allotted $5,000 to go towards a cause of their choice within their district or to support the city overall. It's sort of a, like, I don't know what you call it. It's like a bonus grab bag for if we see something in particular that needs special attention, but is maybe getting missed for myriad reasons or something that's near and dear to our heart.
I see.
You know, I've used some of my money in the past to support like some of the meals at Kids Fish and things like that.
I see, okay.
So it's budgeted, right? It's budgeted.
However, one caveat, your predecessor spent all of it on the youth, on the summer internship program.
Oh, good.
So until
Don't think you
October,
have any money. You don't have
until
any.
October, then after the new budget, if you guys approve it again.
Okay, all right.
Hey, Mr. City Manager, can I adjust mine a little bit? 3 to 5 items for immediate needs, for their immediate needs. Thank you, sir.
Good deal, good deal. What you got, Jeff?
And other than that, I think that I just ask our residents, go beyond social media. Just go beyond social media, Nextdoor, Facebook, whatever it is. And none of us here are reluctant to engage with you, to talk with you, to listen to you. Most of all, leadership is listening, and I'm ready to listen. And so please know that I'm excited about the opportunity to work with everybody here. That's good, and to see everybody as well too. And the sooner that we're able to come together, then that's even, I think, more exciting for all of us. Go get your vaccine if you are so inclined. I think that would be helpful as well to accept, in your situation there, I think, right?
Oh, no, I'm vaccinated. I'm just nervous Nelly.
Right.
And trying to respect,
Yes.
It's an easy thing for me to do, to wear a mask. So.
Thank you.
I would say here to everything that Councilman Compion said. Go beyond social media. I think this city is here and waiting, and also it's a big group of people who are good students and want to learn how to do everything better and more efficiently. And I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to have this council, be a part of a new council. It's exciting. I've never gone through this before, a changing of everything. And yay, and I agree. This is the milestone being here. And I think gonna be all kinds of hiccups. I know socially, I feel like I don't even know how to act around anyone anymore, but I'm looking forward to all the good things that we're gonna do and that we have ahead of us. So.
Good deal. Mr. Jackson, I'd like for us to move forward with our Safe City Initiative meeting with UTMB, with TCIE, with Hitchcock Independent District, Santa Fe Independent School District. We will invite every superintendent, every school board president, because we want to make sure that we're getting it right and we're not leaving anybody out. Also, I'd like for us to workshop the issue with the speed control measures. That's an interesting and a hot button topic. Obviously, as you all can see from the initial onset of our meeting, there are a lot of feelings about this topic, and there's a lot of fear as it relates to children playing in and around right-of-ways and what could potentially happen. And so a lot of our moms are very, very passionate about this. And so we'd like to workshop it so that we can understand it, so that they can understand it, to make sure that their will is reflected. And so I guess we could do that in June. Let me say this before we close tonight. There is an election happening. We have a runoff. As you can see, there are 4 of us and not 5. District A is still not settled. Until then, I would offer myself as a voice for the members of District A, as I have been their voice for 17 years. But I will also say there are 3 other talented people here to my right that would lend themselves. I'm sure they're shaking their heads. So any member of District A that has a question or a concern, we will carry that to City Hall, to the city manager, and to his staff. Most certainly, because you are part of our city as well. Let me say this and then we'll go. Tonight, we have witnessed a new council. We've witnessed a new council partially forming. And when that happens, we have to understand that all councils or organizations, and they're living organizations, they have their own personalities, they have their own priorities, and they have their own way of going about their business. And so what we've witnessed tonight was not any contention between any member of council and Ms. Parnell, or any member of council and Mr. Jackson. I just wish Mr. Jackson a fulfilling and enjoying weekend here just recently. And certainly we'll talk on tomorrow and laugh and talk with one another, certainly, and also get business done. This is not personal. I don't think that Ms. Parnell or Mr. Jackson or any staff member took this personal. It's a new council. We're forming. We're trying to figure out how we engage our administration, but we're also trying to figure out how we engage and interact with each other. Believe me, there is nothing to see here other than the work of the people of the city of Lamarck being done in a different way. And now that has happened, and now that I believe they've gotten a feel for how we would want our business to be conducted on this council, they'll adjust. They always do. Good city managers, good city administrations always adjust. And so I look forward to that adjustment. And I believe that we'll move forward, and it will be easier than tonight now that the message has been sent that elections have consequences. And the consequences of this election is that we will be more transparent, and we will be more engaging. And I don't think that anybody in this room tonight would want anything less than what I've just said. So moving forward, Mr. Jackson, go ahead.
Before you finish, I just wanted to, your first item, the Safe City Initiative with the schools, fully planned on having an update on that for you tonight with the tragedy in the Texas City School District, though I let it ride until after they get a chance to settle down.
Sure. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Certainly our prayers, my prayers, prayers of my family go out to the Texas City Independent School District, to the district administrators, to the staff members, and also to the children that had come to know the principal. I'm not going to say any names. I don't know if there is still an investigation going on, but dear, I'm staying away from it. But certainly our heart goes out to those folks over at Heights Elementary and in the Texas City Independent School District for the tragedy that we all know has happened in our community. Keep those folks in our prayers. It's a difficult road ahead, Certainly, they'll need us every step of the way. If there's nothing further from any of us here tonight. Go ahead.
I did forget one thing. Tink, this Saturday, we have a hurricane.
Hurricane huddle. Yeah.
Hurricane Huddle, Saturday, 8 to 11, Central Fire Station. Staff will be out there. We have some safety measures, some items for our citizens to learn about to be better prepared for hurricanes. I believe Councilman Carlson will be out there running the little kids firefighter games and giving the kids something to do. We'll have some treats and a really nice door prize for one lucky winner.
Good deal. Good deal. Anything else, guys? We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Amen.
All in favor? All right. We stand adjourned.
Thank